Chapter 117. This person is definitely an enemy and not a friend. From Jun Wui's performance at the moment, there must be a lot of stories behind this. However, Jun Wui was in the middle of a full recovery. So, he had to suppress his anger no matter what. Otherwise, he would inevitably fall short of success. Jun Zhantian looked at the expression on Jun Wui's face and seemed to have understood something. He could not help but reveal a look of worry. It has indeed been many years since we last met. I did not know that a distinguished guest would come from afar. Please come in and have a chat. Jun Wui sat motionless as he slowly spoke. His voice was deep and resounding with a hint of heartfelt calmness. At this moment, Third Master Jun had already calmed his mind. His handsome face became like an ancient well without any ripples. His eyes suddenly became unfathomable. He turned to Jun Zhantian and said, "Father, they are here. You do not need to come out personally. This child will deal with everything on his own." Jun Zhantian nodded slowly with a heavy expression. Jun Moxie smiled and stood up. He gently stopped the person who was pushing the wheelchair behind Jun Wui and said, "I will accompany the third uncle." He pushed the wheelchair and slowly walked out of the dining hall. Lengling smiled inwardly. The magnificent jewel hall and the Jun family really have a grudge. In the courtyard, two middle-aged men dressed in white stood side by side. They were equally handsome and had the same elegant demeanor. But from Jun Moxie's point of view, although the two men were standing side by side, their positions were almost the same. Even their postures were almost the same. Only the left hand and the right hand that were close to each other were obviously a little too relaxed. The other two men's eyes were filled with vigilance. So Jun Moxie immediately determined that the two men seemed to be harmonious, but in fact, they were guarding against each other. Although they came from the same school, they were not on good terms with each other. They even had killing intent. No wonder that day at the magnificent jewel hall, the reaction to his bid was so strange. It seems that at that time, the problem was between these two men. "Brother Mu, after so many years, you are still as elegant as ever." Jun Wui's face flashed with a touch of joy, but more than that, he was nostalgic and sad. He smiled faintly at one of them, but didn't pay any attention to the other. The white-robed man took a step forward, and carefully examined Jun Wui's face. Then, he spoke up in a somewhat emotional manner, "Wui, you're the same as you were back then. I believe that if the young lady knew, she would." He suddenly stopped and smiled apologetically, "Wui, these 10 years, how have you been? Your Xian Qi has advanced to the Earth Xian. It's really commendable." In fact, considering Jun Wui's age, it was indeed commendable for him to have advanced to the Earth Xian level. Not to mention that Jun Wui had been disabled for 10 years, but his Xian Qi had advanced instead of regressing. Naturally, it was even more rare. However, no matter how rare Jun Wui was, he was still disabled. This fact could not be changed, at least in the eyes of Brother Mu. When he heard the word "young lady," Jun Wui's calm face showed a trace of sadness. The muscles on his face also showed a painful spasm, and it took a long time for him to calm down. The other man in white also suddenly had a strange look on his face. He looked at Jun Wui's eyes, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Jun Wui, although your lower body is disabled and you have become a waste, but it seems that you are quite open-minded. It's not bad to have such a state of mind." The other white-robed man laughed out loud, and spoke sarcastically. His words were extremely unpleasant to hear, and his attitude was completely different from the previous white-robed man. It seemed as if he and Jun Wui had an irreconcilable enmity. "Your Excellency has really hit the nail on the head. It doesn't matter if my third uncle's legs are disabled, but if his head is disabled like your Excellency's, then there is really no cure." Before Jun Wui could speak, Jun Moxie, who was standing behind him, had already opened his mouth. His tone was light and seemed to have no weight, but his words made the man in white so angry that his face turned even whiter than the white clothes on his body. "Jun Moxie. Ignorant child, I let you go the other day, but you don't even think about it. Today, you are showing off your sharp tongue in front of me. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? That white-robed man looked at Jun Xia in an awe-inspiring manner. The muscles at the corners of his eyes twitched, and his handsome face instantly became somewhat sinister and terrifying. Oh, Your Excellency, this is the Jun family's courtyard, not the magnificent jewel hall. You dare to be so arrogant and domineering in the Jun family's courtyard, and speak to the young master of the Jun family like that? Do you really think that this young master doesn't dare to kill you? Do you believe that this young master won't give an order to chop you into meat paste in an instant? Jun Moxie looked at him leisurely, and his eyes instantly sharpened. Ha ha ha. The man in white looked up to the sky and laughed. After laughing, he turned to Jun Wui and said, Jun Wui, this nephew of yours really makes me appreciate him. He actually said that he wants to kill me, ha ha ha. Jun Wui, you tell him that the Jun family doesn't have the strength to do so, but do you have the guts to kill me? Ha ha ha, really ignorant and ridiculous. Tian Xiang's #1 ignorant debauchee is really not as good as seeing him in person. I admire him, but pity him. Xiao Han, this is the Jun family's residence, and you are too presumptuous and too much. Another man in white shouted angrily, if you don't want to come here with me, then leave immediately. What nonsense are you spouting? Mu Shuetong, you also said that this is the Jun family's residence, and here, you don't have the qualifications to yell at me. The man in white called Xiao Han gloomily looked at Jun Wui and said without turning his head. Ha ha ha, this is really funny. There are too many people in this world who think too highly of themselves, and think too highly of themselves. Jun Moxie laughed loudly, brother, don't think too highly of yourself. Touch your conscience and ask yourself, what kind of trash are you in your organization? Can you speak for the entire organization? Even if my Jun family were to kill you, do you think your master would go to war with my Jun family for your cheap life? Jun Moxie looked at him with pity, poor child, let me tell you the truth. Even if all the people in this world die, the sun and the moon will still rise from Dongfang and set in the west. People, don't think too highly of themselves. Once you neglect this point, you will definitely stumble, and it will be a big stumble. Let me tell you this in a sincere and heartfelt manner, and treat it as a free education for you. Ha ha, I am too kind. A shadow flashed, and a series of pa-pa-pa sounds rang out. The enraged man in white approached Jun Moxie, and raised his palm to slap him. Jun Moxie laughed loudly, and quickly retreated. The man in white followed him like a shadow. Jun Moxie's body swayed left and right, and his head tilted to the side. His shoulder was hit by a palm, but at the same time, he used his elbow and knee to block the attack. Two poo-poo sounds were heard, and the man in white's face turned green and white. He retreated a few steps, and his posture became very unnatural. His eyes turned red, and he looked at Jun Xia as if he was about to spit fire. He was so angry that he wanted to swallow him whole. Although Jun Moxie's words were rude, he was still a junior in the eyes of the man in white. He could teach him a lesson, but he could not kill him. Therefore, the man in white only used 5% of his strength, and was prepared to teach this sharp-tongued debauchee a lesson. Otherwise, as a dignified Tianxian expert, he would have to consider his own status. If he were to disregard his status and bicker with a junior who had not even reached Silver Xian, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? But he never expected that Jun Moxie's counterattack would be so sharp, so fast, so precise, and so ruthless. One elbow hit his throat, and the other knee hit his crotch. He had underestimated his enemy, and was completely unprepared. This boy's attacks were tricky, and his timing was precise. It was incredible, and just right. Even with his reaction, he had still been hit. This brat actually found his blind spot in an instant. If not for the fact that his Xian Qi had reached the Sky Xian realm, these two blows alone would have been enough to kill him on the spot. He wouldn't have been able to die again. Even so, his throat was still burning, and his crotch was in unbearable pain. He had to use all of his willpower to resist the pain, and not let out a groan. Xiao Han snorted angrily, and his entire body flashed with a pale blue radiance. He was desperate to cripple this hateful boy. Mu Shuetong hastily moved sideways, and angrily said, "Are you done yet? You're so fussy with a child. Don't you have any manners?" Jun Wui Lengleng looked at Xiao Han. He had already decided that if Xiao Han dared to attack Jun Moxie, he would expose his own strength, and regardless of the consequences, he would use all of his strength to kill him. Xiao Han panted a few times, and his voice was somewhat hoarse. It was obvious that Jun Moxie's 2 attacks had given him a big shock. He clenched his teeth and said, "Fine. I'll let this boy go for now." He then glared at Jun Moxie. "Boy, you'd better pray to the heavens that you don't fall into my hands." Jun Moxie smiled, and said, "Don't worry, I'm praying to the heavens that you'll meet me when I'm able to kill you." "Just you?" Ha ha ha. Xiao Han was so angry that he started laughing. He heavily snorted, and said, "Hopeless. Is that so? You just got hit in the crotch, and it doesn't hurt anymore?" Jun Moxie Lengleng said. Xiao Han opened his mouth, but no words came out. After all, Xiao Han was a Sky Xian expert. So, he didn't want to speak against his conscience. Especially in front of Jun Mo Xia, who was like an ant to him. He was very clear that he had not used his full strength. After all, Jun Moxie was only a Silver Xian brat. In the eyes of a Tian Xian expert, he was no more than an ant. In fact, even a Gold Xian or Yu Xian expert was no different from an ant in the eyes of a Tian Xian expert. But if he had been hit by someone with Yu Xian's cultivation, then his Xian Qi protection would not have been able to withstand it, and he would have died. As soon as he thought of this, his throat and lower body started to feel pain, and he couldn't help but feel a burst of fear. But besides the fear, his disgust and fear towards Jun Moxie had greatly increased. Jun Wui Lengleng said, "Brother Xiao, did you come all the way here just to bicker with my nephew?" Xiao Han snorted, but didn't speak again. Mu Shuetong smiled and said, "Wui, it's been 10 years, and it's finally my turn to come out. So, someone asked me to bring you a gift." Jun Wui's breathing quickened, and he said, "Is it her?" Chapter 118. Yes. That's her. Mu Shuetong nodded heavily. Then he reached into his bosom. He pulled out a small cloth bag. "What did she ask you to bring? Why didn't I know? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Xiao Han suddenly became furious as he looked at Mu Shuetong. He clenched his fists and his eyes became bloodshot. "Tell me earlier, who are you to me? What is your identity? What is her identity? Does she need to inform you of her actions? It's really ridiculous." Mu Shuetong looked at him with disdain. "Give it to me." Xiao Han's body flashed as he rushed forward and reached out to grab it. Mu Shuetong put the cloth bag into his bosom at lightning speed. Then, the two of them transformed into 2 groups of misty white shadows with a whoosh sound. The brilliance of the blue Xian Qi formed a faint circle around the 2 of them. Then, the sound of punches and kicks was unceasingly transmitted from their bodies. Their strength was fluctuating, and the strong wind was cutting their faces. What an amazing speed! Even though Jun Wui had reached the realm of Tian Xian, he could barely distinguish between the 2. This was not to say that Jun Wui's strength was far inferior to the 2. On the contrary, Jun Wui's 10 years of hard work and the 500 years of Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal efficacies had allowed his Xian Qi cultivation to be higher than the 2. The reason why he was unable to see through their movements was because he had just entered the realm of Tian Xian and needed a relatively stable period. However, Jun Mo Xia's strength had already reached the level of these 2 men. So, his strength was far inferior to theirs. But, his eyesight was still there. So, he could clearly tell who was stronger and who was weaker. He could tell that Xiao Han had also reached the Sky Xian realm, but his strength was far inferior to Mu Shuetong's. In fact, Mu Shuetong had misgivings about Xiao Han's strength, and hadn't dared to use his killer move. Otherwise, Xiao Han would have been dead by now. Even so, bang! Xiao Han let out a mournful cry and flew out in a flash. He coughed in mid-air and spat out a mouthful of blood. He leaped up like a big bird and disappeared outside the door. His resentful voice came from afar, Mu Shuetong. I will remember what happened today, and I will definitely seek revenge in the future. Jun Wui, I will kill you. The dust dispersed, and Mu Shuetong's clothes were as white as snow. He calmly stood in the middle of the field, and looked at Jun Moxie with a strange look in his eyes. Then, he suddenly laughed, Wu Yi, this nephew of yours isn't simple at all. He was able to injure Xiao Han in a single strike, and reduced at least 20% of his strength. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to win so easily. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have found it hard to believe that a brat who hasn't even reached Silver Xian could actually injure a genuine Tian Xian expert. Jun Moxie smiled faintly and said, I believe that any man who is injured in that place will lose more than 20% of his strength. I just happened to bump into him just now. With the gap in strength between him and me, this situation really shouldn't have happened. Those below level 9 are all non-entities, but what if the non-entities have poison in their bodies? Mu Shuetong smiled, that may be the case, but I was entangled with him for so long, and I didn't manage to bump into him in that place. The two of us have been fighting for almost 10 years, and we haven't bumped into each other even once. But, you bumped into him on the first day of our meeting? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Jun Moxie chuckled and said, that's because he never underestimates you. But, he doesn't believe that an ant can hurt him. Mu Shuetong gave a deep look at him, and solemnly said, well, that's true. But, I now know that an ant can also be very frightening. So, I won't underestimate you. Jun Moxie chuckled, and spoke in a noncommittal manner, senior, my third uncle has been waiting anxiously for you. Mu Shuetong laughed, and took out the small cloth bag from his bosom, and handed it over to Jun Wui. Jun Wui's entire body was trembling slightly, and his hands were tightly gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. Kacha sounds could be heard as cracks appeared on the top-quality rosewood wheelchair. After a long time, he slowly stretched out his hand and took the small cloth bag. It was as if he had received an item that weighed 1,000 pounds, and also as if he had received a priceless and fragile treasure. Mu Shuetong stared at Jun Wui, and said in a low voice, the young lady has been waiting for you. Jun Wui suddenly raised his head, what? Could it be that she? Mu Shuetong deeply nodded. The young lady has resisted with her life until now. Jun Wui felt a burst of excitement, and his tiger-like eyes instantly became somewhat sparkling. His trembling hands slowly opened the small cloth bag. His movements were meticulous and cautious, as if he was afraid of messing up the rhythm. The small cloth bag slowly opened, and it turned out to be a handkerchief. And, a wisp of black hair was quietly lying inside it. A few lines of words were embroidered on the other corner of the handkerchief. I haven't tied my hat for 10 years, and my long hair has been left behind for you. Every night, I look at Tian Xiang, and never look back in this life. Jun Wui's whole body trembled like a fallen leaf in the wind. He trembled as he bent down, and slowly pressed his face against the handkerchief. Then, he slowly pressed his face against the bundle of black hair, and didn't raise his head for a long time. Mu Shuetong heaved a long sigh, and said, the young lady, she, is trying to break through to the realm of Xinxian. Jun Wui's whole body shook. But, he still didn't raise his head. It seemed that this handkerchief and this wisp of black hair had become his entire world at this moment. His heart and soul were entrusted to him. Mu Shuetong stood quietly for a long time. Then, he said, Brother Wu Yi, this little brother has come to an end. So, I'll take my leave now. I hope that Brother Wu Yi can understand the young lady's feelings. Sooner or later, you'll have an end to your bitterness. Don't give up so easily. He cupped his hands in obeisance, and then turned around to leave. Jun Wui still didn't raise his head. It wasn't until Mu Shuetong had walked a few feet away that he spoke in a hoarse voice, I've lost my composure. I'm too excited today, and it's not convenient for me to keep Brother Mu. But Brother Wu Yi will come to ask for forgiveness in the future. Brother Mu, please send my regards to Miss Xiao Qian. Xiao Qian was Mu Shuetong's former lover. Mu Shuetong paused, but didn't turn around. Instead, he smiled and said, Xiao Qian is now your sister-in-law. Next time, I'll bring her to see you. Jun Wui sincerely said, congratulations. Mu Shuetong laughed out loud. Then, a sky-blue light flashed, and his body floated along with the cool breeze. It seemed as if he was a falling leaf that was being carried by the cool breeze, and disappeared without a trace. The curtain of night quietly fell, and the world became hazy. Jun Wui was sitting alone in his wheelchair. His face was still pressed against the handkerchief, and that strand of black hair was stuck to it. He was motionless, and his bleak shadow seemed to blend into the endless darkness of the night, and slowly became indistinct. Jun Moxie stood quietly on one side, and didn't make the slightest sound. The uncle and nephew pair, one sitting and one standing, were immersed in their own thoughts. The bright moon slowly rotated in the sky, and the stars twinkled in the sky. Jun Wui finally recovered from his immersion in the past. The 10 years of suffering and torment that had been accumulating in Jun Imosie's heart for the past 10 years were finally revealed to Jun Imosie. 12 years ago, the Jun family was like the sun in the sky, and was at the peak of its glory. Grandpa Jun Zhantian was invincible, and every country was terrified of him. No one dared to challenge him. Jun Wu Hui, the eldest of the 3 heroes of the Jun family, was known as the General in White. He was the #1 young man of the Tianxiang Empire. The second son, Jun Wu Meng, was outstanding in martial arts, and superior in intelligence. He commanded an army, and every country was at his beck and call. The Jun family's momentum was not only in Tianxiang, but also in the entire Xian continent. At that time, Jun Wui was 19 years old. He was in the prime of his youth. He was young, handsome, talented, outstanding in martial arts. His temperament was extraordinary, and his demeanor was free and unrestrained. It was unknown how many daughters of rich families and government officials yearned for him. During one of the magnificent jewel hall's auctions, Jun Wui had nothing to do. He was a teenager, and on a whim, he went in to play, and met a beautiful girl. The two talked happily and had a good impression of each other. After a few days, Jun Wui could not help but go again, and the two held hands and traveled around Tianxiang City. The free Jun Wui and the girl, Han Yanyao, would leave Tianxiang City from time to travel around. As time passed, the feelings between the two grew deeper and deeper. Finally, what was bound to happen between a loving couple naturally happened. After a period of time, many mysterious people suddenly came to Tianxiang City, looking for Jun Wui. At that time, Jun Wui and Han Yanyao were traveling outside, and these people did not even bother to greet them, and directly began to attack the Jun family. The Jun family was at the peak of their power, so they naturally did not fear them. Who would have thought that after a few battles, the Jun family would suffer a great loss? These mysterious people were all masters of the world, and none of the people who attacked were lower than Earth Xian level. Not to mention, there were more than 10 mysterious people who were watching without doing anything. When Jun Wui and Han Yanyao returned, they were naturally shocked to see this scene. The girl, Han Yanyao, explained to Jun Wui that she came from the most mysterious place in the world. Her family could be said to be an extremely powerful hidden family, or rather, the most mysterious organization. 3,000 miles of ice, Silver Blizzard City. Silver Blizzard City. Just the name of this place was enough to make the vast majority of the world's Xian experts tremble in fear. After thousands of years of accumulation, this was a concentration camp of powerful experts. And the magnificent Jewel Hall was one of the branches of the Silver Blizzard City in the mainland. The so-called Magnificent Jewel Hall was just a name for the outside world, and in the Silver Blizzard City, it was just leftover Jewel Hall. In other words, only the things that were eliminated from the Silver Blizzard City's research would be brought here to be auctioned, and all of these things would still be sold at sky-high prices. After the Magnificent Jewel Hall had converted these items into a huge amount of money, they would then use this money to exchange for some strange things, and then return it to the Silver Blizzard City. Whether it was an ordinary old man's longevity technique, or a cultivation technique that could stimulate the potential of the human body, or a rare and precious Xian beast core, or even something from extremely cold or extremely hot places, in short, as long as it was rare in the world, rare in the human world, and beyond the norm, the magnificent jewel hall would buy it all at a satisfactory price. And Han Yanyao was the daughter of the current Silver Blizzard City's lord, Han Zhanmeng. Originally, even if Han Yanyao had an extraordinary background, it was not necessarily a bad thing. Even if Han Yanyao was the daughter of the Silver Blizzard City's lord, and Jun Wui was also a direct descendant of the Jun family, and even if the Jun family was far from being comparable to the Silver Blizzard City, it could still be considered as one of the top families in the world. But the biggest problem was that Han Yanyao had been engaged to the Silver Blizzard City's great elder, Xiao Huifeng's grandson, Xiao Han, since childhood. Chapter 119. Han Yanyao had told Jun Wui before she left that if Jun Wui could reach the realm of Master Shenxian, then there might be hope between the two of them. At that time, Jun Wui could be considered a genius, but he was only at the middle level of the Gold Xian realm. The gap between him and Master Shenxian's realm was too far. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the gap was like the distance between heaven and earth. The Jun family of the Tianxiang Empire suffered a series of defeats in the following 2 years. Jun Wuyi's two elder brothers, Jun Wuhui and Jun Wumeng, died in an inexplicable defeat. Jun Wuyi was also ambushed during a campaign. He was obviously going to win. But, he was defeated, and was crippled for the rest of his life. Mu Shuetong was one of the few people who had accompanied Han Yanyao. He was also the only person in the Silver Blizzard City apart from Han Yanyao who found Jun Wui pleasing to the eye. The two of them called each other brothers. After becoming crippled, Jun Wui had lost all hope, and he knew that he and his beloved would never be together again. Time flies like an arrow, and 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. They could only meet each other in the middle of the night, and he never expected that he would receive news from Han Yanyao today. At this moment, Jun Wui's heart was like a raging sea. Jun Moxie listened quietly, and didn't say a word. He knew that Jun Wui wasn't saying these words for him to hear. But, he had been suppressing it in his heart for too long, and now that he had suddenly received news from his lover, he was excited, and had a strong desire to speak. What he needed now was a way to vent his emotions, and he only needed an audience. And, it didn't matter who this audience was, and whether or not they would be able to understand and listen to him. Even if a stone was placed in front of Jun Wui would still be able to say these words to that stone. After all, he had been repressed for far too long in the past 10 years. The night was as cold as water, and the white fog was like smoke. The dust-laden past events came out of Jun Wui's mouth in a soft whisper, but it felt like a heavy mountain was slowly pressing down on him. Time slowly passed as he spoke. The Jun family is no longer as glorious as it was in the past. Eldest brother and second brother died in battle in a bizarre manner. I suspected that the Silver Blizzard City Xiao family was behind this. Therefore, I immediately launched an investigation. But at that time, my martial arts skills were low, and the Blizzard Silver City was extremely secretive, so I couldn't find anything. Finally, it was my turn to fight against the Yutang Empire. At that time, I had already gained an overwhelming advantage. I only needed one more step to achieve complete victory. But at that time, a few extremely powerful Xian Qi cultivators appeared in the Yutang formation. They led the cavalry in a charge and instantly threw my formation into chaos. Then, several experts rushed into the middle of the army at the same time. They were all at the top cultivation level of Tianxian. He could still remember Chen Matzi shouting at the top of his lungs, "Third General. Let's go! Let's go!" Then, I saw his dark red blood spurt out into the dark blue Xian Qi. Then, Qiao Meng, Duan Qilang, the little stutterer, all of them died in front of me one by one. They were killed in front of me. Before they died, they looked at me. There was only one word in their eyes: let's go. Qiao Meng hugged someone before he died. But, all the bones in his body were broken and smashed. He kept vomiting blood as he shouted for me to leave. At that moment, it was as if I was in a nightmare. Their blood splashed on my face. It was wet, fishy, and sticky. It was the blood of my brothers. Junwoo lowered his head in pain. He frowned. When he was talking about the 2 sentences that Chin-er Matsi shouted, Junwoo's voice became louder as if he was shouting. Then, he lowered his voice and murmured. When he was talking about the last sentence, he couldn't help but use his hand to rub his face forcefully. It was as if he wanted to erase the memory of his comrades' blood when they were trying to escape for him, but I was already crazy at that time. These people were my brothers. They grew up with me. We drank together, sang together, hunted together, went to war together, killed enemies together, celebrated together. In just a few short breaths, they all died in front of my eyes. They're all dead. Right in front of me. That was my brother. My brothers. Not a single one of them. Junwoo suddenly let out a loud roar, and fiercely raised his head. He tightly closed his eyes, and 2 large teardrops slowly trickled down from the corners of his eyes. For me. For me. I wanted to risk my life. I wanted to kill them. Kill them all. Kill. Junwoo roared at the top of his lungs, but his voice soon became low and powerless. But my martial arts are too weak, too weak. They casually grabbed me, and then, they poured some kind of medicine into my body, and then they dispersed the Xian Qi in my dantian, and then they sealed the meridians in my lower body. I didn't scream. I just stared at them without blinking. Although they were all masked, I would be able to recognize any one of them if they appeared in front of me again. I knew that they were from the Silver Blizzard City at that time. The people who came out of that damned place had a cold aura on their bodies. It was the smell of demons. I will always remember their laughter when they were torturing me. He. Junwoo's eyes turned red. Then, oh, there's no then, I've been like this since then, and I can't stand up anymore. I've buried my hatred in my heart, and I don't dare to say it out loud. The Silver Blizzard City is too powerful, and if Father were to find out about it, he would certainly disregard everything to take revenge, but the June family, even if there were 100 of them, they still wouldn't be a match for the Silver Blizzard City. If I were to force it, I would have sacrificed more of my brothers. And the June family would have been annihilated as well. My elder brother died because of me, and I'm still alive and healthy. My brothers died because of me, and not a single one of them was left. But I'm still living in humiliation, and I'm still alive. Junwoo laughed bitterly. His face was full of tears. My 2 nephews died because of me, and I'm still alive. Emos, do you think that the 3rd uncle is useless? Really cowardly? What a fucking piece of trash. Junwoo laughed bitterly. His chest was heaving up and down violently. His hatred was as deep as a mountain. And it was as deep as the sea. And it was as deep as a dam. And it was as deep as a river. Jun Moxie had been listening quietly. His face was calm and collected. After hearing Junwoo's question, he pondered for a moment. Then, he slowly opened his mouth. It would have been easy to die in that situation. But, it would have been too difficult to live. Only a coward would choose to die. And, only a true warrior would be able to survive such a blow. Death is the end of everything. But living on, one has to bear too much. You're alive. And, you're not crazy. 3rd uncle, you're a good man. Junwoo laughed bitterly. Who says I don't want to die? I want to die. But, I can't die. I can't die. Emos, your grandfather has 3 sons. 2 of them are dead. If I die as well, your grandfather will really collapse. Then, the June family will be finished. Jun Moxie was silent. Junwoo had kept these matters bottled up in his heart for a long time. Today, he had met an old friend, an enemy, which had evoked his memories of the past. Then, He had received a keepsake from his former lover, which had left his mind in turmoil. Moreover, his body had just recovered, and his emotions were easily stirred up. So, he had unwittingly spoken so much that he couldn't stop himself. All these years, whenever I closed my eyes, my two brothers would ask me, "Wu, why didn't you take revenge for us?" Whenever I closed my eyes, my brothers would call out to me, "Third General, take revenge for us. Take revenge for us. Take revenge for us." Jun Wui clenched his fists. His face was ferocious. His body was taut like a bow. His palms were dripping with blood. Even in my dreams, I can feel the blood of my brothers. It's still warm and fresh. It's still flowing in front of my eyes. Jun Wui crouched down and covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were trembling. Jun Moxie took a deep breath. He looked up at the night sky. Suddenly, he felt the blood in his body surge. The killing intent that had been dormant for a long time burst out. Leng Leng smiled. "Silver Blizzard City. Shao family. Very good. Do you think you can do whatever you want? For the time being, you will be my target. I don't mind stepping on your path to the peak of this world. Since I'm Jun Moxie now, I will bear the shame and glory of the Jun family. Silver Blizzard City Shao family. Humph. In a few years' time, this evil monarch will make sure that not even a mouse remains in the Shao family." Far away in the shadows, Jun Zhantian stood there in sadness. Looking at his only son, his only grandson, Grandpa Jun's heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Third brother, do you really think I don't know the bitterness in your heart? Silver Blizzard City Shao family, do you think I don't want to take revenge? Do you think that you can hide these things from me just because you didn't say it? All these years, when has this blood feud not been in my heart? But behind us, there is still the Jun family. Our descendants and tens of thousands of followers. If the Jun family were to let their emotions affect their decisions, the Jun family's descendants would be secondary. Their political enemies would uproot the entire Jun family. That would be a bloodbath." Jun Zhantian stood there quietly for a moment. Then, he disappeared into the night wind. Only the uncle and nephew were left. One was sitting and the other was standing in the night wind. They listened to the sobbing of the wind. The bleakness of late autumn drifted through Tianxiang City overnight. Autumn passed day by day. Tianxiang City appeared to be tranquil on the surface. However, it was surging violently in the dark. At least a few hundred messenger birds flapped their wings and flew into the night sky, drawing out beautiful trajectories. There were also many high-level Xian experts who had suddenly ended their long years of secluded cultivation. One by one, they came out from their hiding places and shuttled through the streets and alleys of Tianxiang City. They were trying their best to listen to any gossip and pay attention to any unusual movements. They were like the most dutiful constables who were closely watching the dark side of the capital. Many people in the continent had received the news in just a few days. They were so excited that they couldn't wait to fly to the Tianxiang City. Chapter 120. All of the above was caused by the sudden appearance of an inexplicable piece of news. That inexplicable piece of news, it turned out that the Northern City clan had been wiped out by the mysterious organization during the recent riots in Tianxiang City. The Tang family of the Tianxiang aristocratic family had launched a large-scale search. The reason why the Tang family had lowered their status was because they had lost an extremely important item. The Xian Dan of a peak level 9 Xian beast. This piece of news, which had yet to be finalized, started from a small rumor and spread rapidly. It was as if it had grown wings and was like a hurricane, spreading throughout the entire continent in an extremely short period of time. This is an opportunity. An opportunity to recapture the Xian Dan. In the Grand Preceptor's mansion, Li Yuan was standing in front of Li Shang's sickbed. Her face was covered with a light green veil as she spoke resolutely. "Oh? In the past, we went through a lot of trouble, but we were still the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, we got nothing. How can we say that this is an opportunity? Grand Preceptor Li Shang's complexion had improved a lot. Although he was still very weak, he was no longer in a precarious state like he had claimed to be. In fact, he could even speak normally. At this moment, there was a look of understanding in his eyes as he looked at his grandson. He wanted his grandson to say it out loud. Ever since he had failed to restore his dantian, his old life had been saved. However, his body's condition had deteriorated day by day. Grand Preceptor Li Shang was somewhat disheartened. He was well aware of his body's condition, and was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Therefore, he had been trying his best to cultivate his eldest grandson, Li Yuran. No matter what problem he encountered, he would first ask for Li Yuran's opinion before pointing out any shortcomings. Li Yuran didn't disappoint him. During this period of time, her temperament and shrewdness had improved by leaps and bounds. Her understanding of certain matters had become very sharp. Even Grand Preceptor Li had to sigh at her inferiority. This was because Li Shang's heart was cold, but at the same time, he was comforted. After all, he finally had a successor. The current situation is very clear. The Tang family's Xian Dan had been stolen. In this world, there were probably only 3 groups of people who knew about it. Of course, old Master Tang wouldn't be so stupid as to leak this information and bring trouble to his family. We couldn't leak this information either. The Xian Dan was too important, and the more people who knew about it, the more competitors there would be. Our goal is to seize the Xian Dan before anyone else finds out. Since it wasn't either of us who leaked the secret, the only person who could have leaked it would be the person who obtained the Xian Dan. In other words, as long as we find this person, we will be able to retrieve the complete Xian Dan. On that day, he was the Oriole, while we made a wedding dress for him, allowing that person to obtain the Xian core and gain a huge advantage. That person should have disappeared without a trace, so it's not surprising that there hasn't been any movement for such a long time, and it's only reasonable. But now, he suddenly leaked this information and exposed the existence of the 9th grade Xian Dan. This is puzzling. He didn't leave any traces that day, but today, he made such an unwise move. He must have his own intentions. As for his intentions, I'm stupid. I can only deduce a few things. First, although he has obtained the Xian Dan, he doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't even understand the true function of the Xian Dan. He has obtained it, but he doesn't use it. Therefore, he needs to attract strong people to come here and fish in troubled waters to inquire about the function of the Xian Dan. This is the first reason. Tang Wanli has studied the method of absorbing the 9th grade Xian Dan for decades. He has also inquired about it for decades, but he still hasn't fully understood it. Even we, if not for my master's guidance, I'm afraid we wouldn't know about it. Go on. Li Shang showed a look of appreciation. Secondly, this person is most likely from the Tianxiang city. Moreover, he must be a top-notch expert. In fact, he might have even reached the bottleneck of his Xian Qi cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have released the news at this time. After all, wouldn't it be better to wait patiently for the news to die down? Therefore, I believe that this person is on the verge of a breakthrough. Yes. Is there a third reason? Li Shang's eyes were full of admiration. Third, this person must have the confidence to get what he needs before the strong people arrive. If so, this person must have a very powerful intelligence network. From this point of inference, I'm more than 80% sure that this person is from one of the most powerful families in the capital. Moreover, he has the qualifications to mobilize the power of his entire family. This is why he is so bold and confident. Li Yuran's voice was a little cautious. That's a good analysis. This way, we can narrow down the target to a small area. Li Shang clapped his hands. He was very pleased in his heart. Who are you suspecting now? Our Li family can be ruled out first. The Tang family can also be ruled out. The rest are the Jun family, the Mu Rong family, the Du Gu family, the Meng family, and the Song family. These 5 families are all possible. Li Yuran bent her fingers one by one. However, the Jun family is our old enemy. But, considering Jun Zhantian's integrity, I don't think he would do such a thing. Jun Wui may be physically disabled, but his heart is not. But, he is still disabled, so it's difficult for him to move around. As for Jun Moxie, he's still a debauchee. I'm afraid that he doesn't have the qualifications to mobilize the power of his family. Therefore, the Jun family is the least suspicious at the moment. But, we can't completely rule them out. Anything is possible. The possibility of the Dugu family is not very high. Although they are powerful and have the ability to be the Oriole. But fundamentally speaking, the Dugu family lacks ambition. Otherwise, the Dugu family would have replaced the Jun family a long time ago. The reason why His Majesty tolerates the Dugu family is because the Dugu family has talented warriors. But, unlike the Jun family, which has talented generals, the Dugu family can charge and break through the enemy lines. But, if they want to be like Jun Wu Hui, Jun Wu Meng, Jun Wui, or Jun Zhantian, they can command the entire army. But, the Dugu family definitely doesn't have such talents. In other words, if the Dugu family could produce such a person, I'm afraid that His Majesty would immediately suppress the entire family. After all, the Dugu family is not like the Jun family, who have saved His Majesty's life many times. But, even if the Jun family has done so much, and their descendants are too outstanding, didn't they still end up like this? How could the Dugu family be an exception? So, although the Dugu family is big and has many descendants, they don't have the cohesiveness of the Jun family. Although the Jun family seems to be in decline, the four marshals who have always been victorious are enough to shake the entire kingdom. So, although the Dugu family is slightly more suspicious than the Jun family, they are still on the edge. To put it bluntly, I really don't see any of the Dugu family's schemes. The Meng family, firstly, is our ally. Secondly, the Meng family doesn't have any particularly outstanding people. So, their chances aren't great. For the time being, they can only be ranked third. Among the aristocratic families, the Song family has always been the most low-key. But, a dog that bites never barks. So, the suspicion this time is really not small. It's only second to the Murong family. The Murong family has always had a deep foundation, ambition, and scheming. Moreover, they use their status as a relative of the emperor to look down on the other aristocratic families. So, in this matter, we must pay special attention to the Murong family. Li Yuran carefully analyzed. Her words were spoken very slowly, and it was obvious that she was thinking nervously. Not bad. Li Shang nodded, but, apart from these families, there are a few other directions that you haven't mentioned yet. Please advise me, grandfather. Li Yuran said. There is still one of the biggest aristocratic families in this city. You don't seem to have considered it. The royal family. The royal family is the most powerful family. Although His Majesty is still hiding his strength, I'm afraid that His Majesty would have been assassinated many times over if he didn't have the protection of several top experts. You must pay special attention to this point. Also, there are 3 big gangs in Tianxiang City. They also have considerable strength. So, you must pay attention to them. In addition, we can't completely rule out the possibility of a mysterious expert hiding in Tianxiang City. Also, there are several well-known assassin organizations that have been active in Tianxiang City for some time. These are all possible targets. Li Shang coughed a few times, and propped himself up with difficulty. Then, he opened his eyes wide. This Xiandan incident is bound to cause an unprecedented storm. Yuran, you must be cautious. Also, we don't have enough strength right now. If your master can come here personally, then we'll have a higher chance of success. If he can't come, then you should ask your senior brothers to come here as soon as possible. Otherwise, I advise you to withdraw from this competition. It could be a disaster at any time. Li Shang sighed and lay back on the bed. Yes. I have already sent out the 1,000 miles Oriole in the early morning. I believe that master has already received it. Li Yuran nodded heavily. How is your Xian Qi progress? Li Shang asked with his eyes closed. I have already reached the peak of the gold level. Li Yuran's voice sounded a little guilty, but my realm is still a little unstable. Once it stabilizes, I will be able to attack you Xian. But, this matter. Li Shang raised his hand and stopped her from speaking. Don't say that this matter was unintentional. Even if I knew the consequences, I would still gladly help you. After all, you are the Li family's biggest hope in the future. You don't have to worry about this matter too much. Li Yuran sighed. The last time he had used the seabed jade coral to treat Li Shang's injuries, Li Shang had suffered serious injuries due to an inexplicable explosion. However, Li Yuran's face had been blasted open, and his pretty boy face had been completely ruined. However, fortune and misfortune were often accompanied by fortune. Li Yuran had gained a lot of benefits from this incident. The spiritual energy in the seabed jade coral had to be stimulated by Li Yuran first before Li Shang could further absorb it. During the explosion, because of the sudden interruption, a considerable amount of spiritual energy had coincidentally stayed in Li Yuran's meridians. It could be considered as a blessing in disguise. During this period of time, Li Yuran did not go out because of the injury on his face. Under the help of that energy, he actually advanced from the initial stage of the gold level to the peak of the gold level. Just one step and he would be a jade level Xian. With Li Yuran's age, although this speed of advancement was not unprecedented, it was enough to show disdain for the current generation. Chapter 121. The reason for the destruction of the Northern City clan has long been investigated. There are too many coincidences in this world. The cause was Qin Hu's son, Qin Xiaobao. This little debauchee had unintentionally offended Tang Yuan and Jun Moxie, two big debauches that he could not afford to offend. The two of them retaliated with a personal grudge. With their interference, the destruction of the Northern City clan was only a matter of time. However, I do not know if I am being too paranoid, but I feel that something is not right. However, I am unable to pinpoint the specifics. Li Yuran stood up and slowly paced back and forth. Now that we have lost the eyes and ears of the Northern City clan, we have lost a lot of sources of information. We must make up for this as soon as possible. The matters of the family, I will leave it to you to decide. Li Shang closed his eyes. I originally wanted to recommend you to the imperial court, but since you insist on not doing so, then we will talk about it later. However, Yuran, the foundation of the Li family is still in the imperial court, and not in Jianghu. You must bear this in mind. I know that you have great ambitions, but everything must be done according to one's capabilities. Taking risks and hoping for a fluke cannot be repeated. It is better to be careful than to sail a ship for 10,000 years. This grandson understands. Li Yuran was silent for a long time before replying with her head lowered. A gust of autumn wind blew, and yellow leaves filled the sky. The fluttering yellow leaves sparkled under the sunlight, as if a golden rain had suddenly fallen between heaven and earth. Two people with ordinary faces and clothes were calmly walking on the streets of Tianxiang City. One of them had a sallow complexion, but his stature was exceptionally tall and straight. The sharpness in his eyes didn't match his sallow complexion. The other person was a young man with a slightly darker complexion. Tianxiang City has changed a lot in the past 10 years. The middle-aged man slowly walked, his eyes slowly turning from the two sides of the road. His voice was desolate, as if he was an old man who had just experienced the vicissitudes of life, and had suddenly returned to the normal world. That place used to be the Yi clan's ancestral hall more than 10 years ago. Back then, many of us brothers played there since we were young. Hee. He laughed, but his voice sounded like he was crying. Third uncle, do you also feel as if a lifetime has passed? The young man beside him smiled. In the end, it'll be fine once you get used to it. Everyone has to die. Be it as a person or as a commander, one has to be able to accept life and death. If you can't see past life and death, no matter what you do, you won't achieve much. Letting go of life and death is easier said than done. The middle-aged man sighed. 10 years have passed in this dream, and everything is desolate. My brothers have all turned into dust. Now, I look around, and I am alone. Third uncle, look at our feet. The youth smiled warmly, but there was a hint of mockery in his smile. It was a smile of mockery towards life, a smile of mockery towards the world. At this moment, the youth's eyes carried a look of indifference, as if he had seen through the past and present. He pointed at the ground under his feet. Third uncle, do you know how many people have been buried under this ground for thousands of years? In a sense, we are actually stepping on other people's corpses at every moment. At this moment, we might be stepping on a beggar, and at the next moment, we might be stepping on the remains of an emperor. Whether it's the mountains, rivers, or thick soil, it's not an exaggeration to say that they are all accumulated from corpses. Life and death are just like the withering and flourishing of plants. In the end, what does it matter? One day, you or I will also be lying under this ground for others to step on. But the most important thing is now. Right now, we are stepping on other people all the time. Whether he was an overlord who once ruled over an area, an emperor who once made great contributions, or a beauty who could cause the downfall of a nation, isn't there no reaction now? So, before we are stepped on by others, we must stand at a height where no one can step on us. In the future, only we can step on others. Whether it's the living or the dead. Oh. He laughed arrogantly. If that's the case, what's there to remember? Where is the time to remember the dead? No matter if it's a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, step on them all. No matter if it's a noble or a general, kill them all. No matter if it's a mountain or a sea, go fuck them all. As long as we are alive, we must have no regrets. Even if we are wrong, we must not regret. Right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong, who can say clearly? As long as we are alive, we must enjoy ourselves. Live freely and freely, live as we please. Whoever we don't like, step on them. Whoever offends us, injures us, we must kill them. As for those who stand in our way, we must destroy them. As long as we are alive, no matter if we are male or female, we only need to face the heavens proudly, look down on the earth, move unhindered under the heavens, and look down on the wind and clouds. Only then will we not have wasted our time in this world. The youth's eyes coldly observed everything around him. The rest, at best, is just a game. That's all. These two people were strange. It was actually the young one consoling and preaching to the old. This strange uncle-nephew duo was naturally the uncle and nephew duo of Jun Wui and Jun Moxie. Jun Wui had not left the Jun residence for 10 years. In order to let him relax, Jun Moxie suggested to change his appearance and travel. Jun Wui happily agreed. Then, the uncle and nephew duo slipped out and strolled around the capital. Jun Moxie's disguise technique was inherited from a peerless master of disguise in his previous life. It could be said that it was a combination of ancient and modern techniques. It could be said that in the entire Xian continent, there was no one who could recognize their original appearance. So, the two of them boldly strolled around the capital. Xia, I really didn't expect you to be so. Jun Wui listened to Jun Moxie's words and shook his head with a smile. If I didn't look at you, I'm afraid even I would think that you're an old man who has experienced the vicissitudes of life and death. Jun Xia smiled bitterly in his heart. I'm afraid that I've experienced much more than those old fogies you speak of. I've lived 2 lives, not just in name but also in reality. This was the first Prince's Hall of Virtue 10 years ago. Who would have thought that it would become the Hall of Huanghua today? I really wonder if there's any power in the capital that dares to compete with the first prince for territory. Jun Wui frowned as he looked at a concave on the left side of the road. It was an inconspicuous pavilion. Behind it, there was a continuous rise and fall. It turned out to be a big house. A faint mournful cry came from inside. The voice was weak and full of despair. Hall of Huanghua. What does it mean? Don't tell me it's the meaning of the Hall of Huanghua in the past. The passers-by who passed by the Hall of Huang Hua would hide far away from the entrance. It was as if there were venomous snakes and fierce beasts hiding inside. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear and even hatred. When they passed by the entrance, they hastened their footsteps and hurriedly passed by. Jun Moxie quickly searched his mind and said, "Hall of Huang Hua, it seems to be a place similar to a brothel. However, the age of the people here is relatively young. Moreover, there are some good-looking, As he said this, Jun Moxie's heart suddenly surged with a strong anger. This place is basically a transit station for the sale of young boys and girls. If the aptitude is good, they will be secretly sent away. If the aptitude is not good, but the person is smart and handsome, they will be trained and then sold to the rich families at a high price to make a huge profit. As for the worse ones, they will stay here. After a few years, when they grow up, they will be sold to the Spirit Fog Lake as playthings for men and women. It can be said that this place is a place of evil." Jun Lui's eyes widened as he looked sharply at the Hall of Huang Hua. "I didn't expect that the imperial capital of Tianxiang Empire would have such a despicable place. Don't tell me that the government doesn't care about it." Jun Moxie sighed. In name, the eldest prince had let go of this place a long time ago. However, in reality, who could say for sure what was going on? Who would have the guts to jump out and get stabbed? This used to be the Crown Prince's territory. Even if the Crown Prince didn't secretly make the decision, but how could the people who were able to take over the territory from the Crown Prince be ordinary? The imperial capital was a place that didn't handle all kinds of lawsuits. Behind any random person involved, there could be a royal family, a minister, or even a descendant of the emperor. Who would have the guts to try? Besides, these people had taken in homeless children under the guise of buying and selling real money, which was tantamount to making them their slaves. Who would say anything about it? It's really a foul atmosphere. What a disappointment. Jun Wui snorted coldly. He took a few deep looks, and walked away from the door unwillingly. He had disguised himself today, and it wasn't convenient for him to reveal anything. Moreover, the news of Jun Wui's recovery had to be kept strictly confidential. Even if he was unwilling, he had no choice but to leave. The two of them had only walked a few dozen feet when they suddenly heard a mournful cry behind them. Then, there was a loud thud, and a figure fell to the ground in the middle of the street. It was a young girl in disheveled clothes. There was a large footprint on her back, and her pretty face was contorted in pain. Blood was constantly spilling out of her mouth, and her eyes were lifeless. It seemed that she wouldn't be able to live. However, she was still begging in a low voice, "Please, let my brother, please, don't let him be. Sister." Then, there was a sharp cry, and a thin and weak child could be vaguely seen rushing out with all his might. The man at the door stretched out his hand to stop him. The child's face was full of anxiety, and he struggled with all his might. However, how could a mere child escape from the grip of an adult man? The child was anxious, and suddenly opened his mouth to bite the man's arm. The man retracted his hand in pain, and the child finally took the opportunity to rush out, running towards the dying young girl on the street. The young girl looked at the little figure running towards her, and her eyes revealed joy and worry. She reluctantly stretched out a bloody palm to meet her brother. At this moment, a voice scolded, and then, a sharp sound broke through the air. The child's small body, which was running at high speed, suddenly twisted, like a sugarcane that was suddenly cut off. With a plop, he fell heavily to the ground. His spine was actually broken by a punch in the air. Without making a sound, he had already stopped breathing. His corpse slid a few feet on the ground, and his eyes were bulging with anger. One of his hands was stretched forward, but it was still half a foot away from his sister's palm. This half-a-foot distance was actually a distance that the two siblings could not cross even with their lives on the line. The child was actually walking in front of his dying sister. The young girl howled in grief and indignation, and tried her best to crawl towards her brother's small body. However, she could only struggle a few times, and could no longer move. She stared at her once beautiful big eyes, and finally, the light in them dissipated, but she still refused to die in peace. Although her breathing had stopped, her slender hand still stubbornly stretched out in the direction of her brother. Pa, a small sound was heard, and a copper coin that was missing half of its side fell out of the girl's bosom. It was stained with the blood of the two siblings, and it rolled around for a long time. Then, it crooked at June Imosie's feet, and as luck would have it, it leaned against June Imosie's shoe, and stopped moving. What a sin! How many times has it been this month? Sigh, these children are really pitiful, a passerby muttered to himself in a low voice. He then shook his head, and quickly escaped. They were originally bought slaves. What kind of sin is it to punish their own slaves? A person muttered in disapproval. Many people's faces were filled with pity, and their eyes were filled with indignation. However, they did not dare to speak. In the blink of an eye, everyone had left. The densely packed street had unexpectedly disappeared in an instant. Bastards! Jun Wui heard the voice, and turned around to squeeze through the crowd. However, it was already too late for him to redeem the situation. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. How can you be so cruel to such a small child? Do you still have any humanity? Do you have any justice? Several big men at the entrance had an evil smile on their faces as they looked at the bloody scene that they had created with their own hands. They felt some evil pleasure in their hearts. However, they had never thought that someone would openly stand up and denounce them. This was something that hadn't happened in a long time for the Huanghua Hall. You ignorant wretch! Mind your own business. Go home and drink your mother's milk. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will make you suffer the same fate as those two sluts. Law and justice. I am the justice of the king. The big man who had been bitten opened his eyes wide, and grinned nastily. Jun Wui's attire was that of a scholar's. Moreover, his robe was very ordinary. He looked like a scholar who had failed to pass the imperial examination. How dare you? Jun Wui was unable to restrain his anger. How dare you treat people's lives as if they are grass at the foot of the imperial city? How dare you trample on the law? Jun Imosie's head was lowered at this time, and he was looking at the half of the copper coin at his feet in a daze. The murderous intent in his heart had soared at this moment, and a familiar yet strange feeling had suddenly rushed into his heart. This broken copper coin had taken advantage of the weak vibration, and had coincidentally passed through the feet of several people, and had landed on his shoes. Entrusted? Or, was this the will of the heavens? At this moment, Jun Moxie seemed to have returned to his previous life. He had become the king of assassins, the evil monarch, Jun Moxie. Slowly bending down, Jun Moxie picked up the broken copper coin with an abnormal solemnity. He clasped it in his palm, and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I have accepted your entrustment. This is the first transaction of my life. The heavens have eyes." He slowly raised his head, and looked at the dazzling three words Huanghua Hall. Jun Moxie's eyes slowly narrowed. The sharp light in his narrowed eyes was like a ray of sunlight piercing through the dark clouds in the sky. It made the surging murderous aura on his body somewhat dazzling. I don't care what kind of story is hidden behind this. I don't need to know who this little girl is, and what is her identity. I also don't want to know the strength behind the Huanghua Hall. I only know that I must do this. I have received money from others, and I will help others eliminate disasters. A copper coin is also money, and a broken copper coin is still money. I have received this copper coin, and I have received the reward. Since I have received the reward, then these people must die. Chapter 122. I'm just a killer. When someone needs me to kill someone, I'll do it. I'll be a killer's hand. Jun Wui was about to rush forward when a hand rested on his shoulder. The owner of the hand was Jun Moxie. Third uncle, I'm really curious. You're a valiant general on the battlefield, an expert in battle. How could you do such a thing? Jun Moxie smiled. Jun Wui didn't understand. You're talking to them about the law. Is that useful? If they cared about the law, they wouldn't kill people in public. Didn't you hear them? They're the law. In their eyes, the law was just a tool that they could do without. As for you talking to them about humanity, if they still have a little bit of humanity left, they wouldn't do something as cruel as killing children. Don't you think you're stupid to talk about humanity with an animal? June Moxie said flatly. Oh? Then what do you think I should do? Jun Wui said resolutely. Well, just do what I did. Isn't it a good choice? Jun Moxie's body took a strange step back. His eyes were still looking at Jun Wui. His expression didn't change. His eyes were still as warm as water. His right hand went straight back. Jun Moxie's 5 fingers went straight into the throat of the burly man. Jun Moxie tightened his grip. Crack! The man's throat was crushed. The burly man was provoked by Jun Wui's law. He strode forward, wanting to teach this poor man a lesson. Who knew that as soon as he got near, Jun Moxie would use him as a model? For people like this, you either ignore them, or... Jun Moxie pulled out his hand and elegantly wiped the blood off the burly man's body. He didn't look back. He pushed the burly man's body to the ground. Jun Moxie then continued slowly, or, you must eliminate all evils. The burly man's eyes widened in shock. His eyes met the little girl's hateful eyes. Perhaps he didn't think that his death was caused by the little girl's hiring killer. A copper coin with a gap was the price he had to pay for his life. No, he wasn't worth that penny. There were many lives that would disappear because of that penny. Even the girl herself would not have thought that her vengeance would be avenged, nor would she have known that she would be able to hire a peerless god of death with just a single copper coin. But if she knew this in the underworld, she would be smiling in the underworld. The heavens' will was clear. This was because the moment Jun Moxie picked up the little girl's only wealth, her entire wealth, that chipped copper coin, the king of assassins had made a decision in his heart. From now on, the evil monarch would fight to the death with the Hall of Hell and the people behind it. Exterminate them to the last man. Jun Wui was speechless when he saw Jun Moxie's indifferent expression. Yeah, it's enough to teach them a lesson. Is it necessary to exterminate them to the last man? This kind of person should be dealt with according to the law. That is the right way. Third uncle, although you are upright and just, I have to say that you are too pedantic. The sound of messy footsteps came from behind. Jun Moxie didn't turn his head and said, why don't you try to reason with them? See if you can persuade them. Even if you reveal your identity and order the officials to punish them, what can they do? I can guarantee that they will be released as soon as they turn around. Then, the scene today will continue. It's really funny. The remaining burly men at the door saw their companions die tragically. They roared and rushed forward. Third uncle, actually, we martial artists have to remember one thing. Jun Xia laughed lightly. His face was calm after changing his appearance, but his eyes were as deep as water, with a faint glint in them. He ignored the man who was rushing towards him from behind. It seems that since they can be so unscrupulous, then the laws of Tianxiang Kingdom can no longer bind these people. When the law becomes an umbrella for evil, when the higher-ups use evil to achieve their own goals, when the evil people are arrogant, but no one can punish them properly, this is the time when people like us will inevitably appear. Remember, at this time, the justice in our hearts cannot be restricted by the law. It will become a sharp blade that kills. Kill to stop killing, use violence to control violence, and ruthlessly eliminate these scum of the world. This is justice. There is no need to worry about the heavenly laws and reincarnation. Those are nothing more than dogs fart. Regarding this, I can only kill. Jun Moxie smiled faintly. He was still facing Jun Wui, and his back was still facing the burly men behind him. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and his expression was tranquil. But in an instant, he suddenly turned around and rushed into the group of burly men like lightning. With a few kacha-kacha sounds, he instantly passed through them. Jun Moxie's tall figure did not even turn his head as he leisurely stepped into the hall of Huanghua. His movements were calm and confident, as if he had come to visit a friend. Behind him, one of the burly men was holding a saber in his hand. His throat had turned into a big bloody hole. Another man's chest was clearly caved in, and the third man's crotch was bleeding profusely. The last man's neck had been twisted, and his head hung limply. All dead. Until Jun Moxie's figure disappeared from the Hall of Huanghua, the 4 corpses fell one after another. These men's skills were only that of ordinary people, and their Xian Qi was at most 2nd or 3rd level. But Jun Wui could clearly see that Jun Moxie had only used one move to kill each of them. No! It should be said that it was only one move. But no one could dodge this one move. In fact, they couldn't even react to it. One strike to kill, there was no luck involved. What a terrible killing technique. What if he could avoid it? Jun Wui pondered for a moment. It wouldn't have been difficult for me to dodge it if I had been on full alert. But Mo Xie's killer move was enough to kill an ordinary silver-level Xian Qi expert in a fair fight. As for a higher-level expert, Jun Wui suddenly came to his senses. His nephew had already rushed in. So, he couldn't run into any danger. This Hall of Huanghua had dared to be so brazen. So, there must be some hidden experts inside. So, he hastily followed behind Jun Moxie, and rushed into the Hall of Huanghua. Jun Wui was shocked as he looked around. 5 or 6 corpses had been lying in disorder since he had entered the Hall of Huanghua's entrance. And the injuries on each of these corpses were the same. Their throats had been smashed, and their bones had been crushed. Jun Wui rushed in like a whirlwind. And he finally saw Jun Moxie's figure entering and exiting the rooms in a calm and fast manner. And he was cruel and elegant at the same time. Jun Moxie didn't let go of any of the people who had rushed out of the room. It didn't matter if they were men or women. There were enemies in front of him. But there wasn't a single living person behind him, except for Jun Wui. Not a single one. Jun Wui was undoubtedly worrying too much. The Hall of Huanghua might have the support of a very strong force behind it. But this place was only a branch of this organization. So, it was only responsible for buying and selling goods. So, there weren't many experts here. Moreover, Jun Moxie's attacks were sharp and ruthless to the extreme. The guards who had come out of the Hall of Huanghua fell down immediately. And the madams and prostitutes didn't know any martial arts. But Jun Moxie didn't show any mercy. So, none of them survived. Jun Wui was an expert who had already reached the realm of Tianxian. But he didn't get the opportunity to attack. He acted as a bodyguard. Moreover, he acted as a very incompetent bodyguard. And he acted as a follower and a spectator. Jun Mo Xie's expression remained calm throughout. He moved like the wind, and with a "ka" sound, he broke the throat of another guard. Then, he raised his leg again, and changed the angle of his attack. His leg struck the crotch of another guard on the right, and that guard screamed miserably as blood flowed out of his 7 orifices, and he collapsed to the ground. Along the way, there was blood and corpses. Boom! 3 silhouettes burst through the inner courtyard's door. They stood at the entrance. Who are you people? How dare you come here to cause trouble? Do you know where this place is? It was a middle-aged man in his 40s. Come here to cause trouble? I didn't. I was just entrusted by someone to kill people. Why would I cause trouble? Jun Moxie said with a smile. While he was talking, he didn't relax his foot. The remaining 3 people in front of him fell down in 3 different directions. Along the way, he didn't let any of them go. There were already 40 to 50 corpses lying on the ground. How dare you? Who entrusted you to do this? The middle-aged man was obviously trying to be fierce. Do you know where this place is? Who does this place belong to? Jun Moxie couldn't be bothered with him. He turned his head and said, "Third uncle, I'm a little tired. I'll leave these 3 people to you. You can also exercise your muscles." But you have to finish this quickly. This is the capital city after all. There will be soldiers arriving soon. Soldiers? Jun Wui smiled coldly and nodded. Suddenly, he stretched his body and flew forward like a big bird. A pale blue light suddenly flashed. Elegant but cruel. Ah! Tian Xian is strong. The three of them cried out in pain. Before they could finish their words, they were already sent flying. Tian Xian was a powerhouse against a few silver-leveled Xian practitioners. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds. He didn't even need to use his strength and it was already over. Jun Wui didn't want to kill indiscriminately. But now, Jun Moxie had deliberately escalated the matter to an unmanageable stage. It was obvious that he wanted to kill them all. Moreover, time was of the essence. Jun Wui had no choice but to take the lead and start sweeping. Besides, the people here weren't innocent. Killing indiscriminately was killing indiscriminately. Although Third Master Jun was still very dissatisfied with Jun Moxie's way of doing things. While Jun Wui was sweeping everywhere, Jun Moxie quickly rushed into a room and searched for a while. Then, bang bang bang, sounds were heard. The hitman threw two big boxes into the courtyard. He picked up a knife and cut open the boxes. Suddenly, shining white silver, glistening gold, and banknotes were scattered all over the courtyard. Jun Wui was surprised. He saw that Jun Moxie had already picked up his knife and cut open a few rooms in the corner. He shouted, "Come out! Take the silver and leave quickly. Once you get out, go east." Suddenly, dozens of boys and girls rushed out. When the last sealed door was opened, an indescribable smell assailed their nostrils. Seeing the scene inside, Jun Wui suddenly felt that his previous hesitation and accusations against his nephew were simply condoning and harboring criminals. Chapter 123. In front of Jun Wui's eyes, the lower half of the human body in the jar had already been severely deformed. Below the waist, from the calves to the thighs, it was less than 2 feet. The arms were also deformed. It seemed that they had been in the jar for a long time. Only their heads were exposed to eat, drink, and even defecate inside. Only the eyes of these people were still flickering. They were still looking at the two of them pitifully, but they couldn't make any sound. Upon a closer look, it turned out that their tongues had been cut off. This is a human swine. These people raise children who have no aptitude and no future in this place. Then, they wait for their bodies to slowly deform and distort. Then, they sell them to the circus at a high price. Then, they use these deformed people to win people's sympathy and make money. Jun Mo Xie only glanced at it once, and then turned his head away. "Third uncle, do you still think that the people here shouldn't be killed? Is it enough to just educate them? Not only do they deserve to be punished, they should be hacked into pieces." Jun Wui blushed with shame and rage. What kind of evil heart would be needed to do such a vicious act? Such scum should have died long ago. First, the homeless children were taken in. Then, some of the better aptitude were trained into killing machines. The more outstanding ones were trained. The boys were trained into prostitutes, the girls were trained into prostitutes. As for the less outstanding ones, they were trained into dog slaves. The remaining ones who couldn't be trained became the deformed ones in front of us. Everyone in this place is participating in this work. Do you think that educating the people here is enough? So, I chose to kill. I killed without hesitation, without mercy. I killed until my heart was filled with joy. Jun Moxie nodded slightly. He looked outside the door. A group of young boys and girls, who were initially timid, finally plucked up the courage to pick up the gold and silver on the ground. One by one, they kowtowed to the two of them and ran out of the door. "Third uncle, have you ever thought that among these children, there might be the children of your subordinates who died on the battlefield? Don't be in a hurry to deny it. The weather is unpredictable. It's inevitable that there will be people who lost their parents, have no one to rely on, and have no way to make a living here." When Jun Moxie said this, Jun Wui's eyes instantly turned red. June Moxie's words were calm, callous, and almost cold-blooded, but there was no doubt that they were very reasonable. Although it can't be said that places like this can be found everywhere in Tianxiang Kingdom, it is definitely not a small number. It's just that most of them aren't as brazen as they are here. June Moxie sighed and raised his eyebrows to look at the sky. From afar, the sound of hoofbeats could be heard. The boys and girls in front can still move freely and have a chance to escape, but what about the people in front of us? Do you have any ideas? As a Tianxian expert, Jun Lui naturally heard the commotion. But the dozens of deformed children in front of them were a big problem. It was impossible to bring them away, but if they were left here, it would be the same as entering the tiger's den. Good idea? What good idea? The people in front of us have lost their tongues, their ears are pierced, their limbs are deformed, and there is no hope for them to recover. They have already lost all hope in life. To them, survival is already a form of torture, a life worse than death. Jun Moxie sighed. You mean? Jun Wui was shocked. No. Absolutely not. They are already pitiful enough, do we still want to deprive them of their last bit of life? Jun Moxie turned his head. If that's the case, then we should leave quickly. The officials are already here, if we don't leave now, we will have to face them. Since you don't think we should end their painful existence, then let them continue to be pitiful. He paused for a while and said, you let them live like this, for them, is the greatest pain. Alas, forget it, let's see what happens next. We don't have enough time. Let's go. Jun Lui heaved a deep sigh, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Finally, he looked at the bodies in the altar with a complicated look in his eyes. Finally, he made up his mind and followed behind Jun Moxie. The two of them quickly skimmed over the top of the wall, turned left and right and suddenly disappeared. The two of them had just left when the thunderous sound of hooves stopped at the entrance of the Hall of Huanghua. Then, there was a commotion, and the officers and soldiers rushed in. Xia, your temperament is a bit too cruel and bloodthirsty. You have to control this point carefully. Today's matter was good, but I found that your temperament is a bit too cold. If you encounter something in the future, you have to think carefully, Jun Wui said while walking. Eliminating evil is promoting good. Third uncle, I don't deny that I'm bloodthirsty, but I've never killed a good person. I've never hurt a single one of them. But for those who deserve to be killed, I'll exterminate their entire families. I'll get rid of evil, and I won't leave a single chicken or dog alive. Jun Moxie's complexion was as calm as water. Lengling smiled, but her footsteps didn't stop. The uncle and nephew pair were quite familiar with the terrain, and their movement techniques were also extremely agile. After passing through a few streets and flipping over a few walls, they arrived at a relatively secluded place. The thunderous sound of hooves behind them had already gradually faded away. You're right, we must get rid of evil. If we encounter such a place again, we'll have to intervene. The existence of such a place in this world is simply unacceptable. Jun Wui frowned deeply. Xia, why did you only kill people, but didn't you capture a living person to ask about the mastermind behind the scenes? If we can find the mastermind behind the scenes and eliminate him, then it will be considered complete. Third uncle, what do you think these shrimps know? It's just a waste of effort to ask them. Even if we can get some clues, we'll have to spend a lot of effort to track them down, and we'll expose ourselves. Jun Moxie looked at him with interest. Actually, how can the mastermind behind the scenes sit still after such a thing happened? He'll definitely strengthen his guard and wait for us to come to him. He'll also search for us everywhere, or secretly inquire about us. Judging from his reaction afterwards, isn't it more likely that we'll have a chance of success? At that time, we'll be in the dark, and the mastermind behind the scenes will be in the light. No matter what choice we have to make, it'll be much more convenient. There was another thing that Jun Moxie was too embarrassed to say. If they found out that the mastermind behind the scenes was an important official in the court, or even a member of the royal family, would third uncle really do it? Take this Huanghua Hall as an example. If the mastermind behind the scenes was really the first prince, would you really eliminate him? You're right. Junwui raised his sword-like eyebrows, but now that my body has recovered, I'm determined not to allow such an ugly place to exist in this world. If I know of one, I'll destroy it. Third uncle, I can only tell you that you have a long way to go. Hee, when we go back, third uncle, you should immediately arrange for reliable people to save as many of those who escaped as possible. I'm afraid they won't be able to escape by themselves. Then why did you give them money? Junwui was puzzled. It's just so that they can buy something to eat, or go further away if they're quick-witted. Jun Moxie smiled, in such a situation, we can't help them at all. Whether they can escape or not depends on their own abilities. Therefore, among these people, the further they go, the more secretive they are, the more worthy they are. As for this, it should be third uncle's business. Jun Moxie was talking when he suddenly stopped. He quietly said, "You've been following us for so long. Isn't it time for you to come out?" Junwui was shocked. Is there someone following us? Why didn't I sense it? I've been practicing for many days, and my cultivation level has stabilized at the initial level of Tianxian. It can be said that I'm a real Tianxian master. In that case, what kind of expert would have the ability to follow him without him noticing? And how did Imo Xie discover such a master? Jun Moxie stood still after he finished speaking. His eyes quietly looked at the ground. It was as if there was something attractive on the ground, and he couldn't take his eyes off it. After a long time, a voice was heard, "Haha, not bad." A dark blue light flashed, and a skinny masked man appeared more than 100 feet away. His bright eyes looked at Jun Moxie and Junwui. "Can you tell me, how did you discover me?" Jun Moxie Lengling smiled, "People change. Everyone has their own tricks. There's nothing too rare in this world. Don't think that you're so great. I wonder, what's your purpose in following us?" This man's mask was obviously torn from his clothes. It was very simple, and it was obviously done on the spur of the moment. I don't have any evil intentions. I just admired the two masters with a sense of justice. I was curious, so I decided to follow you. We're all kindred spirits. Since you don't have any evil intentions, please go ahead. We have other important matters to attend to, and we don't want anyone to follow us. We don't want any mysterious kindred spirits following us. Even if this person is a master from Tianxian. Jun Moxie was not polite at all. "Young lad, do you know the consequences of being so rude to an old man like me? If I wanted to keep the two of you here, would I need to spend more effort?" The old man seemed to be very angry, and he glared at him. Hearing this, Junwui snorted coldly. He straightened his back and was about to step forward. "Young lad? Are you talking about that?" "Old man, I don't like to create unnecessary karma. I just don't want to kill you for no reason. You can try to keep us here. Let's see who will stay here." A sharp light flashed in Jun Imo Xie's eyes, and a blue light sparkled. His body leaned forward, and he spread out his hands. With a pang sound, a deep blue ocean appeared between his hands. "Old man, since you have the guts to follow us, you should be prepared to go to the netherworld. I'll fulfill your wish." Jun Moxie's eyes were full of disdain as he looked at the old man. "The netherworld is inviting a guest. Go on your way." Jun Moxie's eyes were full of confidence. He had already grasped the life and death of this old man. It seemed that this middle-level Tianxian old man was as weak as an ant in his eyes. He could easily crush him to death. Tianxian Peak. The masked old man was shocked. He took 3 steps back, and the look in his eyes changed from one of confidence to one of horror. Others could be faked to deceive people, but the inherent color of a Tianxian Peak couldn't be deceived. Could it be that a Tianxian Peak expert could retain his youthful appearance, and even rejuvenate his youth? This was a direct collision. One was a Tianxian Peak expert, and the other was a Tianxian Peak expert. How could they fight this battle? Damn it! Since when were there so many Tianxian Peak experts in Tianxiang City? This chapter has been written for 9 hours. modify, delete, write again, modify again, delete again. In total, I've been tossing and turning for nearly 10,000 words. I still can't decide what to do with those deformed and pitiful people. This is the first time I've been in such a dilemma since I started writing this book. I'll post it like this. Everyone, please leave a comment and express your opinion. Chapter 124. Brother, your Xian Qi cultivation is unfathomable. I admit that I am not as good as you. I apologize for my previous slip of the tongue. However, the battle with Tian Xian will surely shock the world. I will ask for your advice in the future. But I will not change my mind. If we are fated to meet again in the future, we will understand clearly. The old man turned his feet and leaped into the air like a whirlwind. With a flash of blue light, he disappeared without a trace. He did not stay any longer. He walked away without looking back, like a wild horse that had its buttocks cut by a knife. His speed was extremely fast. Jun Wui breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Jun Moxie cautiously. Mo Xia, you have the cultivation of Tian Xian? How is this possible? This is incredible. Jun Mo Xia laughed, but didn't say anything. He winked and the two hurriedly slipped away. After walking for a long distance, the two had changed their clothes several times. A small forest appeared in front of them. Just before they approached the forest, Jun Moxie suddenly stopped. He turned around and said loudly, I didn't expect there to be someone who doesn't know life from death. Are you not afraid of death? Do you want to go on your own, or do you want me to send you back to your hometown? Jun Wui was shocked. Someone was following him again. He did not find anything this time. He could not help but feel frustrated. But this time, after waiting for a long time, there was no sound at all. Jun Moxie smiled and said, well, we can go home after we pass through this forest. I have confirmed that no one is following us. Jun Wui suddenly understood. Mo Xia, you have been lying all along. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. Third uncle, you don't think that I am really at the peak of Tian Xian, do you? You are already at the early stage of Tian Xian, but you did not notice the old man's existence. How can I find him? That old man is strong, but his psychological quality is not good. As soon as he heard that I was going to kill him, he immediately ran away. He is too weak. Oh. That can only mean that your expression and tone are too realistic. Jun Wui shook his head and smiled bitterly. So that's how it is. If it were me, I'm afraid I would have been tricked out by you as well. Coupled with that azure light, no matter who you trust, you will run away. There's nothing we can do about it. Who knew that we would do such a big thing this time? If he wasn't careful, wouldn't he bring disaster to his family? That was a Tian Xian expert just now. His strength was probably only slightly inferior to Grandpa. He really had the strength to take us down. It would be unwise to create a strong enemy for ourselves. Jun Moxie quickly passed through the forest. As he walked, he said, I reckon that behind the Huanghua Hall, there must be a powerful person in charge. We have no choice but to guard against them. Moreover, we shouldn't make too many strong enemies. Before we completely eradicate them, we absolutely cannot expose ourselves. Hearing the sound of Jun Wui passing through the forest behind him, Jun Moxie paused and said, Third uncle, pay attention to my feet and follow me. Jun Wui heard this and was puzzled. Could it be that there was some kind of mystery in the way of walking? However, Jun Wui was already accustomed to listening to Jun Moxie's words. He closely followed him and carefully paid attention to his route. At first, he didn't feel anything. But after a while, he realized that Jun Moxie's way of walking was quite ingenious. Although Jun Moxie was passing through the forest at high speed, his limbs didn't touch any branches. With one hand in front and the other at the back, his left hand in front of him gently and quickly pushed aside the branches and leaves in front of him. His body passed through in the blink of an eye. Unexpectedly, he was able to not shake off even a yellow leaf that was about to fall. His hand behind him also returned the branches and leaves to their original positions in the blink of an eye. His feet stepped on the leaves with the tips of his toes. After passing through quickly, he unexpectedly didn't leave a single trace. In fact, he didn't even step on a tiny bug under his feet. Every step he took was just enough to cover his body and face with the surrounding leaves, branches, and trunks. At the same time, his hands were placed in front of him and behind him, one high and one low. He maintained an absolute balance at all times. This coordinated with the contraction of his muscles. Unexpectedly, he was in the best state of preparation to attack at every moment. All these movements were natural, yet extremely fast. The coordination between his hands, eyes, feet, and waist could be said to be seamless. However, it appeared to be smooth and natural. It seemed that all of these movements were completely instinctive. At the same time, he unexpectedly sealed his breathing and his pores. Not a single trace of Duju's scent leaked out from his body. This whole set of movements did not seem to be eye-catching. However, only an expert would be able to see that with this kind of ability, no one would be able to discover his tracks in the forest. His feet were full of fallen leaves and dried branches. However, when Jun Moxie stepped on them, he did not make any sound. Moreover, on a dried leaf not far in front of him, there was a colorful little bird. It was still stretching its neck and singing after Jun Moxie had passed by. Such a big living person had passed by in front of it. However, as a bird that was naturally sensitive to and afraid of humans, it actually did not notice at all. Jun Wui was a little overwhelmed with shock. As a strong Tian Xian warrior, a high-level warrior, and a great general who had been on expeditions all year round, he clearly knew how difficult it was to achieve what Jun Moxie had achieved. And this kind of realm was not something that could be achieved with a high level of Xian Qi cultivation. This experience of Jun Moxie had completely integrated into his blood and instincts. Even if it was a strong person at the peak of the supreme Shenxian, if he did not go through strict and systematic training, he would definitely not be able to achieve what Jun Moxie had achieved. Even if he had trained, it would be very difficult to achieve such an unimaginable result. Jun Wui thought that he was already careful and meticulous enough. However, compared to Jun Moxie's movements, Jun Wui looked at the footprints behind him, the dried branches that he had stepped on, and the traces that he had left along the way. He could not help but feel ashamed. Even if it is a dried leaf that is about to fall off, if it is intentionally or unintentionally touched, there will be special scars. These are all subtle clues that are helpful for tracking. In this world, the conditions for survival can be very strange. However, the traces that lead to people's defeat can be found everywhere. Therefore, we must be cautious, especially in the face of so many powerful enemies. Jun Moxie spoke in a low voice. Ever since they had come out, the relationship between Jun Moxie and his third uncle seemed to have been reversed. But surprisingly, both of them felt that this was a matter of course. In fact, the third uncle Jun Wui was much more orthodox than the hitman Jun Moxie. The third uncle had a strong sense of justice, and was chivalrous and courageous. He was warm-hearted, and would not hesitate to help others. This was his lovable and respectable part. The hitman Jun was admittedly a very lovable assassin, but his principles were somewhat excessive. For example, although he had already decided to deal with the Huanghua Hull, but if it hadn't been for that girl's copper coin falling at his feet, then he might not have made his move today. And this unlucky principle had created a fundamental difference between the hitman Jun and the third master Jun. The character of this uncle and nephew pair were poles apart. Jun Moxie certainly admired and respected people like the third uncle, but his heart would never approve of such a person. There was no other reason for this. Although this kind of person was worthy of the admiration of everyone in the world, but his sense of justice was too strong. Moreover, his actions were inflexible, and often led to defeat, and even death. In fact, the defeat was so painful that it was not worth it. The third uncle Jun's respectable strength was actually his fatal weakness. The hitman Jun had determined that if someone were to use this point to set up a trap, then it would absolutely be a success. But if someone were to use this point to make a fuss about Jun Moxie, then they would absolutely not be able to achieve any results. In fact, they might even go for wool and come home shorn. Therefore, Jun Moxie had been instilling new ideas into Jun Wooey almost all the time. He didn't expect Jun Wooey to completely change, but he hoped that it would slightly influence his style of doing things. In certain situations, it would be advantageous for him to make a choice. And ever since Jun Moxie had healed Jun Wooey's injuries, and his body had recovered, he had speculated that Jun Moxie was being taught by an unrivaled master. Therefore, he had long since become accustomed to the strange actions of Jun Moxie. These methods and experiences of Jun Moxie should have been taught to him by that unrivaled master. His nephew had taught him this, and it was tantamount to him learning from that master. This was not a shameful thing, and even more so not something that he could not accept. Therefore, Jun Wooey's state of mind was very calm. Today, Jun Moxie accompanied Jun Wooey. The main purpose was to accompany his third uncle to relax, and the other was to go to the Spirit Fog Lake's Nichong Pavilion to see that Lady Yu. After all, this girl seemed to have an unresolvable enmity with the Jun family. If he could get rid of her as soon as possible, it would be better to get rid of her as soon as possible. But when he thought about taking his uncle to a brothel, especially when his third uncle had just recovered, this seemed to be a bit inappropriate. Don't look at how Jun Wooey didn't say anything, but if he said that they were going to a brothel, it was estimated that he would be beaten up. Therefore, Jun Moxie simply cancelled his original plan. However, today's harvest was not small. The most important thing was that today, he had taught Jun Wooey how to use the disguise technique. In the future, his third uncle, who had been in a wheelchair for 10 years, would definitely not be able to stay at home after he recovered. If that was the case, then he would have more and more time to himself, hehe. Third uncle, when we go back, I will have to trouble you with a matter. Jun Moxie spoke as he walked, deliberately slowing his movements so that Jun Wooey could see clearly. These were skills that would help him in the future. I bought a large piece of meteoric iron, and I would like to ask third uncle to cut it for me. Jun Moxie had used all of his magic treasures, but he didn't know what kind of material the meteoric iron was made of, but the more he refined it, the stronger it became. Although it had shrunk in size, and its weight had also lightened a lot, but he was still unable to melt it. With his current ability, he didn't have any hope of cutting the meteoric iron, so he had no choice but to ask for help. Jun Wooey may not be stronger than the hitman, but his Xian Qi cultivation was comparable to that of the Tian Xian family, and this was something that the hitman could never hope to achieve. No problem. Jun Wooey readily agreed. Now that his body had completely recovered, and his Xian Qi was still rising in the Tian Xian realm, and the Blazing Heart Meridian's residual efficacy was also slowly but continuously playing a role, so he was full of confidence. Whatever you want, I'll cut it into whatever shape you want. Haha. Chapter 125. Over the next few days, Jun Wooey had to endure the sound of Jun Mo Xia hammering away at the iron. Although he had cut them into the shape of small knives, but whether it was the sharpness or the balance of the weight, Jun Mo Xia had to personally craft them to a satisfactory degree. Moreover, he would be more familiar with the use of the knives that he had polished himself. Jun Moxie had the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to recover at any time. But the few burly men who lit the fire and played the bellows had their arms swollen to the size of their thighs. Mo Xia, there's something I'm curious about. Why haven't I seen you practice martial arts? Jun Wooey was a little surprised. Guan Qinghan's so-called feeding was just a game to Jun Moxie. A painful game. But apart from that, Jun Wooey had never seen Jun Moxie have any time to meditate or practice martial arts. But his mysterious abilities had shocked him more and more. It seemed that he was improving at every moment. Even if it couldn't be said that he was traveling 1,000 miles in one step, it was close. How could this not shock Jun Wooey? Practice martial arts? Jun Moxie looked at him in surprise. Third uncle, I'm practicing martial arts every moment. Why can't you see it? What kind of look is that? Ha! Jun Wooey couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise. Could it be that third uncle really thinks that only by calming down, holding one's breath, sitting cross-legged, and nourishing one's dantian. Can one be considered as practicing martial arts? Jun Mo Xie's tone of voice was somewhat flabbergasted. I feel that Xian cultivation can be carried out at all times. While eating, while walking, while fighting, while talking, while standing, sitting, walking, running. Anything can be done to cultivate. Even when you're sleeping, you can hypnotize yourself before you sleep, and you can still practice in your dreams. There are 24 hours in a day, and I don't waste even a minute or a second. Even though we are talking right now, I am still practicing. How can you say that I am not practicing? Or rather, you should ask me when I don't practice martial arts. Jun Moxie smiled. You can do that? Jun Wui's eyes widened even more in shock. When you walk, you practice lightness, kung fu, alertness, and sensitivity of touch. At the same time, you can also practice your eyes, ears, and body touch. All of these can be practiced. As long as you have the heart, you can practice martial arts. Jun Mo Xia replied in a serious manner, it's the same when you're in battle, but you'll need to practice your state of mind. When you're alone, you'll need to temper your willpower. When you're busy, you'll need to keep your heart calm. As for your Xian Gong, it's running automatically all the time. Unless you're at the stage of breaking through, you can practice your Xian Gong at any other time. Is it hard to understand? Jun Moxie said as if it was a matter of course, but he noticed that Jun Wui's eyes widened more and more, and it seemed like they were going to pop out. You're practicing martial arts, and you're doing these dodging and evading actions instinctively. You're multitasking, and you're not messed up at all. Jun Wui gasped, isn't this a little too difficult? How can it be multitasking? Jun Moxie said with some helplessness, everything has to be integrated into the instinct, and you have to do it naturally. You don't need to think, and you don't need to do it deliberately. How can you say that you're multitasking? Jun Wui was speechless. He finally realized one thing, his nephew was a freak. He was a normal person. Comparing himself with a freak, wasn't he looking for trouble? This kind of unimaginable cultivation method, if it was anyone else, they would have long been possessed by the devil, and it was not impossible for them to drive themselves crazy. But from his mouth, it was as normal as eating cabbage. How could it be so easy to practice martial arts and qi? Third uncle, you don't have to be too deliberate. In fact, it's just a process of habit becoming natural. For example, when we walk, our eyes are looking ahead, our feet are stepping on the road, and our mouth is talking. At the same time, we smell the fragrance of the earth, the fragrance of the flowers, or the stench, and our eyes see red, green, yellow, people, horses, and other things. But we do not delay anything, and we can distinguish all these clearly in our minds. Strictly speaking, these are all things that can be done by multitasking, but we do not. Everything is done naturally. Jun Moxie smiled leisurely, in fact, practicing martial arts can also be done like this. The reason why you can't do it is that you're not focused enough on practicing martial arts, and you're not absolutely devoted enough. That's all. Every day, no matter what you do, tell yourself, I'm practicing martial arts. At first, you might not be used to it, but over time, this sentence will become your habit. At that time, when you are doing something, you will start practicing martial arts. Over time, you will feel that you are practicing martial arts, and you won't feel any difference. It's that simple. Jun Moxie smiled. For example, the two of us, uncle and nephew, didn't delay anything, and didn't even think about it. We're already home, aren't we? Jun Wui pondered, and raised his head. Sure enough, the back door of the Jun residence was not far away. No wonder you're so indifferent to everything. It turns out that in your heart, you're indifferent to everything, including life. Oh, it's not indifferent, but something similar to open-mindedness. Jun Wui pondered, but couldn't explain it. It was only now that he realized that he had unconsciously imitated Jun Moxie's movements along the way. Now that he stopped, he actually felt an indescribable sense of fatigue. Jun Moxie's Xian Qi and body were obviously not as good as his, but he didn't show the slightest sign of fatigue. He had to admit that habit was indeed a very powerful force. He had just returned home when a servant came to report, General Dugu Wudi has come to look for the third young master. Young Master Tang Yuan has also come to look for the third young master. His colleague had also received 3 invitations, and they were actually inviting Jun Moxie to a banquet. It was a coincidence that the first prince, the second prince, and the third prince had invited the first prince. His Majesty the Emperor's 3 sons had all started to make friends with that debauchee, Jun Moxie. This matter was very strange. Jun Lui looked at him deeply, and said, "Mo Xia, from now on, you walk your own path. You know what you're doing, and that's enough. I will make it clear to your grandfather that we will no longer restrict you." He paused for a moment and then continued, "We believe in you." Jun Moxie's performance during this period of time had made Jun Lui feel very relieved. In fact, he had even begun to admire him. Therefore, he decided to let go, and leave everything to Jun Moxie. That was because he realized that Jun Moxie seemed to not care about anything. But, he cared about one thing. No matter what he did, he didn't like to be disturbed. Even if it was just sitting, standing, or walking, he had his own style. Moreover, his vigilance had become his instinct. Anyone who wanted to take advantage of someone like Jun Mo Xia was undoubtedly more difficult than ascending to the heavens. "Thank you, third uncle." Jun Moxie was silent for a moment. Then, he sincerely thanked him. "Jun Moxie. What kind of weird stuff did you put in that bullshit wine?" 7 of them were still unconscious. "If anything happens to them, I will tear you apart." Great General Dugu Wudi flew into a rage. He had jumped up the moment Jun Moxie showed up. The usually valiant old man Dugu had unexpectedly become a lot more haggard in one night. The Dugu family's 7 ferocious brothers had been sleeping soundly ever since they had been carried back. They had yet to wake up. Even when they tried to drink sobering soup, tea, vinegar, soy sauce, none of them had any effect. Even when they were stabbed with a knife, there was still no response. If it weren't for the thunderous snoring of the 7 brothers, which was enough to prove that they had drunk too much, old man Dugu would have probably gone crazy. "Jun Zhantian's grandson is a grandson, but my grandson isn't a grandson. You've knocked out 7 of them in one go. How can I live like this?" But drinking to such an extent is truly unprecedented, and no one will ever be able to do so. "Dugu Wudi, a little bastard like you dares to be so rude in front of this old man? Do you really think that this old man doesn't dare to teach you a lesson? Previously, you allowed your grandson to cause trouble in my Jun residence and wantonly destroyed everything. Then, you left without a care in the world. You said that you would compensate me according to the price, but this old man didn't even see a single silver. Now, your son and nephew stole wine and drank too much. So, you want to blame me? Is there still justice in this world?" Old man Jun's voice was sinister. "They haven't woken up yet." "Haha, that's easy." Jun Moxie snickered in his heart. "I knew you wouldn't be able to wake them up." He lazily sat down on the armchair and crossed his legs. "What did I do to them? They obviously have a hangover. Look at you. But, if you want me to wake them up, I will need money." "Money?" Dugu Wudi's face turned black. The great general couldn't understand. Although the Jun family couldn't cover the sky with one hand in Tianxiang, they were still a super family in name. So, how could their only successor be such a money grubber? Money every time he opened his mouth, he would swindle and blackmail. He would resort to every conceivable means. He dared to ask for 25 million silver for a jug of wine. Even the emperor wouldn't be as ruthless as him. "How much do you want this time?" "I'll say this first. Don't open your mouth if you want to swindle me." Dugu Wudi clenched his teeth as he looked at Grandpa Jun, who was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. "It's not much. 70,000 taels of silver should be enough for the materials needed to wake them up. I'm absolutely honest with you, and I'm honest with you. It's a good price, and it's genuine." Jun Mo Xia stretched out 5 fingers from his right hand, and stretched out 2 fingers from his left hand. "Fortunately, it's only 70,000 silver taels." Otherwise, your fingers wouldn't even have enough, Duguwudi taunted. Chapter 126. Duguwudi's face turned purple as he fiercely threw out a stack of banknotes. He felt extremely depressed. It was hard to imagine that the legendary Jun Wu Hui, who commanded thousands of troops, would raise such a scoundrel as a son. Jun Moxie got up and walked out. After a while, he came back with a few burly men behind him, each carrying a small jar of wine. Here, 7 jars. Everyone, drink a few more bowls, as many jars as you can. I'll be fine after I neutralize the alcohol in my stomach. Head intoxication needed to be washed down with alcohol before it would be effective. Are you playing with me? Duguwudi flew into a rage. Do you think I haven't tried this method before? He had already fed them quite a lot, but it was useless. Vomit as much as you drink. What do you know? The reason why they are drunk is because they secretly drank my secret top-grade wine source. 1 cup is equivalent to a jug of new wine, so you can imagine how strong the wine is. Each of them drank at least 1 bowl, so how could they not be drunk? If an ordinary person were to drink so much top-grade wine, it would be hard to tell if they would be drunk to death. If they were to use ordinary methods to cure the effects of alcohol, it would be difficult for them to do so. Even if you know to mix it with wine to make their stomachs react and neutralize it, my wine is far superior to any ordinary wine in the world. Naturally, it's difficult to neutralize it. Only the origin wine that I brewed myself and blended together can produce the effect of water and milk. Only then could it have the effect of dispelling the alcohol. Do you understand? If you don't have any knowledge, you should at least have some common sense. If you don't have common sense, you should at least have some experience. What great general of the empire! Jun Imo Xia was merciless. Even if what you said makes sense, then, there's no need for 7 jars of wine, right? There were only 7 of them, so 2 jars of wine would be enough. Aren't you clearly blackmailing me? Duguwudi really did not understand the difference between white spirit source intoxication and ordinary intoxication, so he could only avoid this topic. This was 10,000 taels of silver for a jar. It was a sky-high price. My wine hasn't opened for business yet. Today is the opening day. Jun Moxie smiled as he weighed the banknotes in his hand. That's why I've already sold it to you at a very cheap price. I might not be able to sell it at this price in the future. Duguwudi walked away with a black face. He really didn't want to stay any longer. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his temper, and would beat up that brat in front of Grandpa Jun. This time, I heard that you provoked that girl from the Dugu family. Grandpa Jun smiled kindly and narrowed his eyes. His gaze was filled with the desire to hug his great-grandson. Grandpa, don't mess around. I can't wait to hide from that wild girl. I'm just curious. Why did their whole family come and say that I bullied their daughter? It's obviously their daughter who bullied me, okay? Jun Moxie sighed with grievance. It's really unreasonable. What's so unreasonable about this? It's very simple. That girl has obviously taken a fancy to you. Grandpa Jun smiled like a sly old fox. If that girl hadn't taken a fancy to you, they wouldn't have come here to cause trouble. That old bastard Dugu Zongheng has calculated everything clearly. Every day, he plays the fool. Humph, how could this old man not see through his cunning mind? What cunning mind? Jun Moxie felt strange. He really didn't understand this matter. Dugu Xiaoyi has taken a fancy to you. Silly boy, on one hand, the Dugu family doesn't want you to be their son-in-law. On the other hand, His Majesty also won't allow you to be their son-in-law. This isn't difficult to understand, right? Jun Zhantian stroked his beard. Of course I understand. If the 2 military families of the Tianxiang Empire were to unite by marriage, it would be a huge threat to the imperial family. Jun Moxie nodded. It seemed as if he understood tacitly. You still don't understand. Grandpa Jun was somewhat depressed. Why is this grandson of mine making such a mistake on this matter? However, the Duga family has also prepared for the worst. If Duga Xiaoyi really wants to commit suicide and refuses to marry you, they will first come here to cause trouble. Then, they will find an excuse to torment you. Then, the two families will openly fight. Of course, it will be a fake fight. Do you understand now? Let His Majesty understand that although the Jun family has married the most favored daughter of the Duga family, the two families have completely fallen out. When the time comes, there won't be any trouble. Instead, His Majesty will personally act as a matchmaker for the two of you in order to prevent internal strife. Do you still not understand? Duga Zongheng sent his grandchildren to cause trouble. No matter what happens in the future, he will be prepared in advance. Now, this old thing must be very proud of himself. Humph. Grandpa Jun was furious. That old bastard Duga Zongheng is treating this old man like a fool. He didn't realize that even this old man can see through his intentions, let alone His Majesty. This old man doesn't even know how to play tricks. He's really a pig. If we don't prepare in advance, it will be difficult to avoid being implicated by this old man. Jun Mo Xia was left dumbstruck by the news. He really couldn't imagine what these old men were thinking about every day. Even a transmigrator like him couldn't keep up with their pace of thinking. Let's work harder. Grandpa Jun winked at his grandson and encouraged him. Marrying or not marrying is not a problem. Let this old man hold my great-grandson first. That is the most important thing right now. Jun Moxie was sweating profusely. What kind of grandfather is this? It's hard for a grandson not to learn bad things. Let's put this aside for now. In any case, if something happens, it will be Duga Zongheng who will have a headache first. It has nothing to do with our Jun family. Who told his granddaughter to like my grandson? Grandpa Jun was extremely irresponsible. Let's talk about the matter at hand first. You are now very popular. The three princes are fighting to curry favor with you. TSK, you are really awesome. I can't help it. I am so handsome that even men want to look at me. Jun Moxie touched his chin. He was quite intoxicated by it. He is indeed very handsome. How can a descendant of my Jun family not be handsome? Jun Zhantian did not despise Jun Moxie's narcissism. Instead, he was very intoxicated. But whether he is handsome or not has nothing to do with him. It only matters to those little girls. You should think about how to deal with these three people. Let me tell you, these three are not easy to deal with. Once they stick to you, you won't be able to get rid of them. Don't think that just because you are a little clever, they will sell you out. Understand? Yes, I understand. In fact, my plan is... Jun Moxie didn't want to say it. But after thinking about it, he decided to let Grandpa Jun be prepared. You don't need to tell me your specific plan. That is your own business. You understand? It has nothing to do with our Jun family. As long as you have your own plan, this old man is not interested. Do you understand? Grandpa Jun didn't let him finish. He waved his hand and interrupted him. He walked away with his hands behind his back. Jun Moxie was speechless. Don't ask if you don't want to know. I wasn't going to tell you. But now, I have been struggling in my heart for a long time. I want to tell you everything, but you are the one who dropped the ball. Jun Dashao shook his head and returned to his small courtyard. He saw that Fatty Tang was anxiously waiting for him. It had been a long time since he had seen him. Since the last time, Hitman Jun had been busy treating Third Master Jun's injuries, recuperating, and accompanying him on his business trips. He hadn't seen this good friend of his for more than a month. To be honest, he really did miss him. However, this missing feeling disappeared the moment he saw him again. A certain huge lump of meat kept asking a certain little girl, "When is he coming back?" Then, he asked, "Why isn't he back yet?" Then, he asked, "He didn't die outside, right?" The little maid, Little Ku, was trembling as she received Tang Yuan. She was a little afraid of this ferocious-looking giant fatty. She was afraid that he would suddenly fall down and hit her. Her small body wouldn't be able to bear it. She might even be crushed to death on the spot. Fatty Tang, what are you doing here? Jun Moxie held the 3 invitations in his hand. He felt like he was holding 3 bombs. These 3 brothers didn't discuss this beforehand. They sent the invitations at the same time. What's the meaning of this? He was having a headache when he saw this body of greasy fat. It was really uncomfortable. Woo woo. Third young master, you're back. You have to give your brother an idea. I don't want to live anymore. I won't be able to see you again. Tang Yuan's snot and tears streamed down his face. If you don't give me an idea this time, you'll what? You'll eat one more meal? You don't want to live anymore? Hurry up and find a good place to settle this. What's the matter with me? Jun Moxie sat on the chair in front of him. He tilted his head and looked at him. Fatty, just say it. Don't put on a sad show. What happened to you? He suddenly slapped his thigh. You lost your wife again. Fuck. Tang Yuan cursed. Am I that kind of person? If you don't say it, I'm going to sleep. Jun Moxie was about to get up. Don't. Master. You're my master. Boss, you have to give me an idea. Otherwise, I'm dead. Tang Yuan hurriedly stopped him. Hurry up and get to the point. I'm very busy. I don't have time to play with you. Jun Moxie narrowed his eyes. I can't bear to look back. Third young master, the old master wants to send me to the palace. Tang Yuan cried. What? Your grandfather wants you to be a eunuch? Your grandfather is too open-minded, isn't he? Jun Xia quivered, and sat up straight. His eyes were perfectly round as he stared at Jun Xia. You're the one who wants to be a eunuch. Tang Yuan was furious. Are there no other positions in the palace besides eunuchs? Of course there are other positions, but they're not suitable for you. Only this position is barely passable. Jun Moxie rubbed his chin and laughed. What do you mean? Do you think I'm only suitable to be a eunuch? You're pissing me off. Tang Yuan was furious. He wanted to cry but no tears came out. Then tell me, what are your strengths? What kind of position can you be? Jun Moxie ignored the angry fatty Tang and smiled faintly. I have many strengths, such as... Fatty Tang gave an example for a long time but could not continue. Don't give an example. Your grandfather wants you to replace Murong Chenjun, right? Jun Moxie saw how embarrassed Fatty was and decided not to tease him anymore. He gave him a sidelong glance and said with a faint smile. Chapter 127. So swift and resolute. Your old man is too skillful. Amazing. Jun Moxie was shocked. Fatty's father's methods were indeed amazing. To be the commander of the Imperial bodyguards, one would not be able to do so without real talent. But Fatty's father was able to pull all the strings and let Fatty Tang take on this incredible position. Truly amazing. Really amazing. This is really distressing. Third young master, what my father and grandfather want is for me to first develop in the palace, first grasp the level of the palace, and then temper myself in this big vat of dye. Then, my father will choose the right time to transfer me outside, toss and turn, and finally come back. At that time, I will conveniently inherit my father's position. Do you understand? Tang Yuan had a bitter expression on his face. In other words, you will be the next head of the Tang family? Jun Moxie's eyes widened. This was too unbelievable. Based on this fatty's conduct, he was going to be the head of the Tang family. The head of the Tang family, one of the largest families in the Tianxiang Empire. Who would believe this? Yes, it happened a few days ago. I don't know where this old man came from, but he said that he was my grandfather's good friend from 40 years ago. Tang Yuan was furious. Damn it, we haven't heard from each other for 40 years. Now that the Tang family has become rich, he came over to acknowledge us as good friends. How can there be such a good friend? But my grandfather actually believed him. Stop. What does this have to do with you? June Moxie felt a headache coming on. This fatty's words were jumping too far. What was this all about? How can it have nothing to do with me? After that old bastard came to the Tang family, he conducted a series of tests on Tang staff, Tang Bao, and Tang Gua. After that, he happily told my grandfather that those three good-for-nothings were the best at cultivating Xian Qi. He proposed to take them as his disciples, and promised that he would raise them to the Earth Xian level within 10 years. My grandfather was overjoyed when he heard that and agreed without hesitation. My grandfather only has 4 grandsons. Tang Yuan sighed. Do you understand now? I still don't understand. All I understand is that the Tang family may have 3 more Earth Xian experts in 10 years. This is a great thing for the Tang family. But, this has nothing to do with you. What are you trying to say? June Moxie looked at him blankly. Third young master, you're usually so smart. Why are you so stupid today? If the 3 brothers leave with master, what will happen to the Tang family? Someone had to inherit it, right? Am I not the only one left? Who else should I beat up if not Dad and old Master Qin? Isn't this what it means to force a duck onto a perch? Tang Yuan was somewhat speechless. Let me explain it to you, third young master. Families like ours, big or small, have a mix of good and bad, but they all have one thing in common. That is, as long as one person is the head of the family, he will be able to maintain the family's business. Then, the others with good aptitudes and potential in the cultivation of Xian Qi will be nurtured into the family's guardian deity. During this period of time, it is best to have the guidance of a famous master. Then, when these people are successful in cultivating Xian Qi, they will start to train the next generation in their family. They will train men of sacrifice, and cultivate secret forces. This will be passed down from generation to generation. Gradually, the family will become so deeply rooted that even the royal family will not dare to provoke it. This will ensure that the ancestors' incense will burn for thousands of years to come. All the families are working hard in this direction. And I, for no reason, have become such an unlucky person. Can you understand my pain? Tang Yuan sighed. Understand my ass. I think you are the one who is sick. June Moxie said disdainfully. You are given a high position and a generous salary. You are the head of the family. You are given a lifetime of glory. Are you still not satisfied? If it were not for the fact that the 3 of them are talented in cultivation, you would not have had such a good opportunity in your life. You are just showing off, aren't you? Do you know that in the secular world, the inheritance right of a family or a little property can make brothers turn against each other? They will fight each other and break up the family. You are still trying to show off. I don't want to be an official. I don't want to be the head of the family. Fuck. How many times do you want me to say it? Tang Yuan shouted with a red face and neck. Show off my D***CK. Let's not talk about how much responsibility the head of the family has to bear. Just talk about the intrigue and traps in the officialdom. Do you really think I am made of it? Can I bear it? I don't have any ability. I just want to be free for the rest of my life. I want to be a free and unfettered playboy. I have never wanted to bear any responsibility. I don't have the shoulders, and I don't have the heart. Do you understand? Tang Yuan roared, spittle flying. You don't want to be an official, you don't want to be the head of the family, and you don't want to bear the responsibility. Then what do you want to do? June Moxie frowned. Third young master, if others don't understand me, there is still love. Don't you understand me? We are bosom friends. You want to live a happy life. I want to do the same. But I am not a woman. Tang Yuan's eyes shone with longing. Brother, in this life, the things that I love the most are silver and gold. Watching silver and gold fall from other people's pockets into my own, that kind of feeling is really refreshing. June Moxie was speechless for 5 seconds. What kind of person is this? Who is your bosom friend? Your bosom friend is June Moxie, okay, not me. Although I am June Moxie, but I am really not me. You like to have sex the most, but I like to do business the most. As for my family's business, I only hope that I can take over the family business, and then open my Tang family's business to every corner of the continent. Tang Yuan waved his arm, which was thicker than June Moxie's thigh, majestically. Following his bold movements, the fat on his body danced happily. That's not difficult. You can just explain it to old master. June Moxie was puzzled. Don't look at Tang Yuan. In June Moxie's impression, Fatty was an expert in doing business. Perhaps this was the only redeeming quality of Fatty. And there was no reason for old Master Tang not to approve of it. I understand. Tang Yuan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. With a swoosh, he took off his robe, revealing his back, which was as fat as a pig's. Kuth cried out in alarm and turned her head away, her face completely red. See, third young master. This is the result of explaining things to the old man. Tang Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air as he showed his back to June Mo Xia. So forceful. June Mo Xia was dumbstruck as he looked at the 10 bruises on Tang Yuan's back. The bruises were purple with a hint of black. Look at this. There were 5 or 6 footprints on Fatty Tang's stomach. Then, he put down his clothes and said resentfully, I won't show you my butt. It's even worse than these 2 places. It almost beat the shit out of me. That's awesome. June Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looks like there's no turning back. Let's not talk about these useless things. Since your father has already paved the way for you, I believe that as long as you don't cause too much trouble, you'll definitely be able to deal with it easily. For now, let's not say that you don't know what's good for you. To be honest, even if I'm willing to think of a way for you now, there's nothing I can think of. All the procedures are just a formality for you now. I advise you to be an honest official, and then take over as the head of the family. June Dashao was speechless. For the sake of this official position, who knew how many people had racked their brains to curry favor, even abandoning their wives and children? They were heartless and unscrupulous. Yet, Fatty Tang was enjoying the fruits of their labor, and yet he was unwilling. What is this? Is he more evil than me? Isn't that robbing my rice bowl? I'd rather die in glory than live in dishonor. I'd rather die than submit. Tang Yuan stood up passionately and placed one hand on his chest. With a resolute expression, he looked out the door and recited a poem. I don't manage the family, I don't want to be an official. My life's wish is to make a lot of money. Pfft. June Moxie fell on his butt along with the chair, looking battered and exhausted. I've lived 2 lives, but I've never seen such a clown before. It's not that there's no way, because there's still a link that hasn't been cleared. This link can't be bribed even if I spend all my family's assets. Tang Yuan squinted his eyes. He seemed to be in a good mood after writing a poem. It's that old eunuch Zhu. Old eunuch Zhu? As June Moxie spoke, an idea suddenly popped up in his mind. Fatty Tang is very good at doing business. Moreover, his family doesn't allow him to do business. If I help him with this huge favor, then the 2 of us can start a business together. Perhaps it will save me a lot of time to save up my wealth. With this thought, June Moxie immediately looked at Tang Yuan with a strange look, making Fatty Tang's hair stand on end. You? Why are you looking at me like that? I'm not into that kind of thing. I'm still a virgin. Tang Yuan hugged his chest, feeling a little scared. Ugh. June Moxie finally felt a little proud, but his internal organs started to churn because of this sentence. Alright, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Just tell me, which stage is old eunuch Zhu in charge of? Let's see if I can think of any way. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. Old eunuch Zhu was His Majesty's personal bodyguard. He had always kept a low profile, but Jun Moxie guessed that he should be an expert. Old eunuch Zhu's full name was Zhu Zhu Zhu. It was a very funny name, but big shots like Jun Zhantian and Duga Wudi were always polite to him. From this, it could be seen that this eunuch was an expert who was physically but not mentally disabled. He was definitely not an ordinary person. That old eunuch is in charge of the body examination. I'll be stripped naked and let that old thing fiddle with me over and over again. Tang Yuan's face was bitter. Although I'm a little fat, my body is definitely very healthy. I don't have any diseases. I can definitely pass. That's what worries me the most. Fatty Tang patted his belly. Although he was worried, he was also somewhat proud of himself. Suddenly, he mysteriously moved his head closer. I heard that when Murong Qian Jun was examined by him, he even twisted that thing for a long time. That pretty boy Murong Qian Jun had to walk with his legs wide open for the next half a month. That's really embarrassing. Fatty Tang's tone was one of schadenfreude and gossip. You're still in the mood to be happy? You'll have to walk with your legs wide open soon. Jun Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or to be angry. He glared at him. He couldn't imagine how this fatty's brain worked. Yes, third young master, you have to save me. I don't want to walk with my legs wide open. Tang Yuan suddenly remembered his own situation. Chapter 128. Body Examination. Stripped naked, will the whole body be examined? Jun Moxie thoughtfully stretched out a finger and made a poking gesture, squinting his eyes. The back, will it also be examined? It's to check for hemorrhoids or something. Tang Yuan was a little bitter. Just in case. Those with hidden illnesses won't be able to pass. Fatty Tang felt a chill run down his spine, and the hairs on his body stood up. Third young master, when I heard that a eunuch was going to do it everywhere, and I was going to have to strip naked. I was absolutely terrified. Don't even talk about emergencies. Fuck, what the hell is this? My hair is already standing on end. Jun Moxie scratched his arm, there was already a dense layer of goosebumps. The fact that even the hitman Jun's hair was standing on end, one could only imagine the horror. Is there a way? I'm counting on you. Tang Yuan looked at him hopefully. Yes. But, you must come and find me on the morning of the inspection. Then, I will help you prepare. In that case. Jun Mo Xia winked and smiled. Then, he suddenly burst into laughter while holding his stomach. I don't understand what you mean. Tang Yuan blinked his small eyes. You don't need to understand, in fact, I also don't want you to enter the palace, I also want to partner with you to do business. The two of us will make a fortune together. Jun Moxie smiled mischievously, carefully observing Fatty Tang's expression. Do business? Big business? Tang Yuan's spirit was shaken, he was even a little excited, he was moved to blink twice. Third young master. You really are my second parent, and also a roundworm in my stomach. Get lost. You'd better think about how they'll deal with you if you fail to live up to your father's expectations. It seems like all of your father's previous efforts have been in vain. Jun Moxie lifted his leg and kicked. Tang Yuan clutched his buttocks and cried out in pain. He grimaced in pain and said, I'm fine. As long as the imperial edict doesn't come, do you think my father will beat me to death? If I grind a little more, I'll be able to get a scapegoat, ha ha ha. Fatty Tang was safe and sound, so he walked away. Jun Moxie laughed heartily, suddenly feeling as if all the depression in his heart had been swept away. This fatty is really a clown, and a joker at that. As he was laughing, he suddenly remembered what Tang Yuan had said. A good friend that Tang Wanli had not contacted for 40 years suddenly appeared, and it was a super expert. He couldn't help but stop laughing. He smacked his lips and thought to himself, "Super Master. How super could it be?" Was he also attracted by the news of the Xian Dan? Wasn't this too fast? If that's the case, it seems that Tianxiang City will soon be in turmoil. Anyway, the wind, the tiger, the cloud, and the dragon will each show their remarkable abilities. I'll just stay behind the scenes and reap the benefits. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune automatically operated in his body, and Jun Moxie could clearly feel that the energy flow in his meridians was now close to saturation. It had originally been a thin stream of energy, but now it had become a smooth stream of energy that was rapidly passing through his body. His movements also felt more free and at ease. Jun Moxie had a very strange premonition. There was no reason for it at all. It was as if the energy flow in his meridians had reached saturation, and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune had begun to enter the second stage. This was also the time to open the second layer of the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda. Therefore, during this period of time, Jun Moxie did not dare to be negligent in the slightest. At every moment, he operated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to increase his cultivation. In the last 2 days, Jun Moxie was pleasantly surprised to discover that he could not only absorb the energy from the Hongjun Pagoda, but could also absorb the same amount of energy from the outside world. Although the amount was very small and thin, it indicated that this was a huge improvement. Jun Moxie was looking forward to breaking through to the second layer of the Hongjun Pagoda. The first layer was just a foundation, and there was already such a terrifying existence. If he were to open the second layer, the temperature had dropped in recent days, and the autumn wind was bleak. The whole city was desolate. Yellow leaves were fluttering in the sky, but because Jun Moxie had been practicing at home most of the time, he had absorbed a large amount of energy from heaven and earth. Since he could not absorb it himself, he had scattered it around his courtyard. So much so that his courtyard and the neighboring courtyards of Junwui and Guanqinghan were covered in lush greenery. In fact, some branches were even sprouting new buds. The most bizarre thing was that Guanqinghan's most beloved ice-clear orchid had even sprouted a few small flower buds. This abnormal phenomenon had caused Guanqinghan to view it as a treasure. The upcoming storm in Tianxiang City had undoubtedly given Jun Moxie a lot of pressure. Pressure could also be a driving force. Therefore, Jun Moxie was forcing himself to improve his strength before the storm arrived. In his previous life, he had always been a loner, free and unfettered. He could do whatever he wanted. But in today's environment, Jun Moxie suddenly found himself lonely. Which big family did not have a group of people to protect them? If he wanted to live freely in this world, he could do it with his own strength. But if he wanted the entire Jun family to live comfortably, then it would be impossible without a strong force. The 300 men that he had personally trained were far from being of any use. For the first time in his life, Jun Moxie wanted to establish his own team. This was also the first time in both of his lives. Once he had helped his grandfather improve his strength, and resolved the Jun family's worries, then he would start to develop his own secret force. No matter what, he had to recruit a few experts. Otherwise, what could a few silver Xian and gold Xian experts do in the face of so many experts? If he wanted to recruit, then he had to recruit real experts. If they were mediocre, then he would rather give up. But if they were really top-notch experts, then how could they be so easily subdued? Jun Moxie scratched his head, suddenly fantasizing about a phrase he had read in his previous life: when the body of a tiger shakes, all the heroes under the heavens will bow their heads in worship. Everyone will be loyal and devoted, and from then on, they will lay a foundation that will last for eternity. If I could also shake my body like a tiger, all the heroes under the heavens will bow their heads in worship. How good would that be? Jun Moxie propped his chin in his hands as he fantasized. Holding the 3 invitations, Jun Moxie's eyes flashed. No matter what, the second prince's invitation must be given to him. The reason was simple: the banquet was to be held at the Nichang Pavilion. Jun Moxie had eavesdropped on that night, and the hatred of that Lady Yu towards the Jun family was still lingering in Jun Moxie's mind. Such a vicious woman. If June Moxie didn't find out about her background and then eradicate her, then he would feel sorry for himself. But the second prince's invitation had given June Moxie a very good opportunity. Also, counting the time, the matter of the Xian beast tendon crossbows should have been over for a long time, but I don't know if the people sent by my grandfather have received any news. As for the first prince's banquet at the Misty Rain Pavilion and the third prince's banquet at the Splendid Lake, June Moxie didn't care about them at all. For the time being, those places held no attraction for him. I've decided, I'll go to the Enichang Pavilion this afternoon. June Mo Xia beamed with a radiant smile, and strode out of the small courtyard with big strides. He was prepared to blatantly tell his grandfather that he was going to visit a brothel and ask him to assign 2 bodyguards, preferably strong ones. Just as he rushed out of the door, he saw Guan Qinghan's snow-white robe slowly walking towards him, her cold eyes looking at June Moxie. "You're going out?" "Yes, I'm going to the Enichang Pavilion." June Mo Xia replied in a very honest manner. "Besides, this isn't a shameful matter. The emperor's son is treating me to a meal, and I'm only an invited guest. So, how can I be blamed for this? Shameless. Going to such a place and still acting so righteous. I thought you were really a prodigal son turning over a new leaf, but after pretending to be a good person for 2 days, you've revealed your true colors." Guan Qinghan's face suddenly turned red with anger. She was about to step forward and teach him a lesson. This guy had been well behaved for a few days, but today he actually openly said in front of her that he wanted to go to a brothel. How could this be tolerated? Uncle can tolerate this, but sister-in-law cannot. June Moxie dodged Guan Qinghan's palm, laughed and said, "Sister-in-law, in fact, you look very good when you're angry. I'm just speaking from the bottom of my heart." Guan Qinghan's face was as cold as frost, her hand moved like the wind, not saying a word. "If I don't teach this kid a lesson today, I'm afraid he'll revert to his old ways. In any case, today's routine exchange of pointers hasn't started yet." Third uncle is really too much. It was obviously grandfather who arranged this exchange of pointers. How could he just stop it? June Mo Xia dodged left and right. Then, he suddenly slid a few feet away. Then, he laughed mischievously and said, "Sister-in-law, let's postpone today's spar for now. I'll spar with you later. She's still waiting for me." Then, he disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Guan Qinghan was so angry that her chest felt stuffy. June Moxie's words were the truth. The second prince was indeed waiting for him at the Enichang Pavilion, but in Guan Qinghan's ears, it was as if he was talking about those lowly prostitutes waiting for him. How could she not fly into a rage? This kid has been acting like a man for the past few days. I can't let him continue like this. If I do so, how can I face my deceased in-laws and his elder brother? Guan Qinghan bit her lips and quickly walked towards Grandpa June's study. June Moxie was amazed as he walked. He almost couldn't believe his own subtle progress. Previously, when he was sparring with Guan Qinghan, he was unable to display his true strength. Moreover, he had to try his best to restrain his instinct to kill. In a situation where he was unable to retaliate, it was naturally quite difficult for him to dodge. But today, under the circumstances of Guan Qinghan's rage, he was actually able to dodge and dodge with ease. That day, he even managed to hit a vital point of a Tian Xian expert. Although he wasn't prepared for it, but a hit is a hit, this fact cannot be denied. Chapter 129. Recalling the day when he and Jun Wui killed people in the Hall of Huanghua, June Moxie frowned thoughtfully. If it was in his previous life, he would only be at the level of a Ho Tian warrior. But in this world, the strict classification of Xian Qi gave June Moxie a subtle feeling that there was no comparison. The Xian Qi in this world, from the 1st grade to the 9th grade, then from the silver grade to the immortal grade. Every grade was clearly defined. However, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune that he cultivated, aside from the mysterious abilities, compared to the Xian Qi of this world in terms of pure strength, there seemed to be something wrong. In fact, it was very wrong. His cultivation, according to this world's standards, was equivalent to directly abandoning the first, second, and third level Xian Qi, and starting from the fourth level. After cultivating for such a long time, in terms of pure strength, he should not be able to match a silver level Xian Qi. But if he were to face a silver level Xian Qi, even if it was a peak silver level Xian Qi, he was confident that he could easily kill it. Looking at this rate of progress, when the first level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune reaches completion, it should be the peak silver level Xian Qi of this world breaking through to the gold level. What if he breaks through to the second level? What would be the comparison? Moreover, if the Xian Qi cultivation in this world could be accelerated with the help of external forces, then would the art of unlocking heaven's fortune be able to do the same? If it was possible, then what kind of things would be beneficial to his cultivation? Thinking of this, Jun Moxie suddenly felt that he had gone out too little. He should go out more often. After all, the world in front of him was very different from his original world. Grandpa Jun was not at home, so Jun Moxie called 2 guards to accompany him. After all, it was the second prince who had invited him to the banquet. At this time, the second prince would not be able to protect him. If he had any malicious intentions towards him, it would be the same as shooting himself in the foot. Therefore, there was absolutely no risk. Guan Qinghan and Jun Dashao arrived at Grandpa Jun's study almost at the same time. Naturally, they did not find anything. Still angry, they simply took a detour and went to look for the third uncle, Jun Wui. Jun Wui had just issued the family head's order, dispatching absolutely reliable men to rescue the fleeing boys and girls. This was the first time that Third Master Jun had exercised his authority after receiving the family head's order from Grandpa Jun. However, Third Master Jun did not have the time to savor the wonderful taste of power. Instead, he sat on the useless wheelchair and carefully thought about the words that Jun Moxie had said along the way. He also thought about the superb concealment skills and counter-tracking strategies that Jun Moxie had displayed along the way. The more he thought about it, the more he felt the taste was boundless. Every action that Jun Sunshao had made, every action that he had taken, every word that he had said, seemed to contain a deep meaning. Every time he thought about it, he would have a different experience. Thinking back to Jun Moxie's words, training is my instinct. I do not need to deliberately train, but I do my best to train at all times. Every time Jun Wui thought about this sentence, his mouth would be filled with a lingering aftertaste. This sentence was not just reasonable, it was simply the truth. If one could train to such a level, what kind of perseverance would one need? But at the same time, if one could really do it, what kind of achievements would one achieve? Not to mention, the number of experts that Jun Wui had come into contact with in his life was not small. Even if there were many experts like Tian Xian, there was absolutely no one who could achieve what Jun Moxie had done. Although Jun Moxie was still young, his achievements and attitude towards martial arts had already become an immortal legend. Jun Wui let out a deep breath, his eyebrows slowly knitted together. Since Mo Xia could do it, why can't I do it myself? Am I really that useless? At the same time, Jun Wui also realized that if he wanted to rely on his own strength to take revenge and obtain the approval of Han Yanyao's family, Jun Moxie's training method might be the best choice for him. Jun Wui was deep in thought, but he did not know that with this one thought, Jun Wui had truly embarked on the path of a peak expert. Although it was only the beginning, this was because the reason why Jun Moxie was able to train on his own was because the internal energy that he had cultivated in his previous life and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune were special things that were different from this world's Xian Qi. Naturally, those Xian Qi could follow the flow of his blood and Qi. Moreover, Jun Moxie had the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda to constantly supply Xian Qi to help him train, so it was actually not difficult to achieve this. But now, Jun Wui was indulging in the wildest fantasies. If he wanted to achieve this, it would undoubtedly be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Although the Xian Qi in this world had similar functions as internal energy, its nature was completely different. Xian Qi focused more on lethality, and its effect was violent. If it was allowed to run on its own, then the tragedy of Qigong deviation might occur at any time. Therefore, all the Xian Qi cultivators were very careful, and they would try not to be disturbed during their training. Now that Jun Wui had this kind of thinking, he had basically made a great change. There was a saying, daring to think is already half the battle. The sound of hurried footsteps could be heard, and it could be heard that the owner of the footsteps was brewing anger. Is it Qing Han? Why is she so angry? What happened? Jun Wui instantly determined the identity of the person. Third uncle, Jun Moxie, that little bastard, you don't even care about him. Today, he openly told me that he went to the Spirit Fog Lake's Chang Pavilion. Guan Qing Han was panting with anger, but this anger was only directed at Jun Mo Xia. In this family, Guan Qing Han had a heartfelt respect for her grandfather, Jun Zhantian, and her third uncle, who was both physically and mentally disabled, but not mentally disabled. That's it? Jun Wuyi was a little surprised. Ah. That's it? That's a small matter. He has only been quiet for a few days, and now he's showing his true colors. How can he continue like this? Guan Qing Han was panting with anger. Oh, I know about this matter. I made him go. Jun Wui woke up from his contemplation and said in a light tone. You know about it? Or did you make him go? You. Guan Qing Han's eyes widened in astonishment. It seemed as if this was the first time she had met Jun Wui, the third master. Jun Qing Han, you misunderstood. This time, the second prince took the initiative to talk to him, and the location happened to be at the Spirit Fog Lake's Chang Pavilion. Jun Wui smiled warmly. Qing Han Mo Xia, he is actually very sensible. Sensible? Guan Qing Han was somewhat speechless. With Jun Moxie's actions over the years, it could be said that he had committed all sorts of evil deeds. But now, Jun Wui had actually said that he was very sensible. What kind of words was this? I didn't understand before, but now I understand. Guan Qing Han sighed in disappointment and turned to walk away. So it's really spoiled, I really understand. Hey, there are a lot of things that you will naturally know in the future. Jun Wui, who was behind her, said lightly. In the blink of an eye, his mind was immersed in Xian Qi cultivation. Guan Qing Han's footsteps paused for a moment, but she still left. Jun Wui sighed and whispered, Come, invite the housekeeper Uncle Pang to come here. Old Pang came quickly and stood in front of Jun Wui in the blink of an eye. Uncle Pang, there is one thing that I need you to do for me. Jun Wui rubbed his face with both hands. It seemed that it was difficult for him to make a decision. What is it? Please tell me. Old Pang's face was very solemn. This was the first thing that Jun Wui had ordered him to do since he took over as the head of the family. No matter what it was, it had to be done to perfection. It is said that the Public Security Bureau of the capital has found a large group of, disabled children in the Huanghua Hall. They are quite pitiful. Jun Wui finally made up his mind. You go and see how many of them are still alive. Then bring them all to the Jun family. Our family is very big, so we don't mind having a few more people to eat. They are just children. Yes, I will do it. Old Pang said as he turned to leave. If it is possible to not expose your identity, then do not expose it. If someone tries to obstruct you, then just say that it is my intention. Jun Wui looked straight ahead, and his eyes gradually became sharp. Chang Pavilion. The huge third floor was now empty, and there were only a few people sitting there. Each of them was wearing a light coat, and had a graceful and elegant expression on their faces. They were all dressed like scholars. The one in the middle had a handsome face, and was very young. His clothes were not very luxurious, but his expression and movements were naturally revealing a kind of noble and elegant aura. Second master, it is just a trivial debauchee, Jun Moxie. There is no need for second master to personally come out to deal with him. Any one of us coming out to deal with him is already giving him a lot of face. Now that second master has personally come out to deal with him, it is a bit too much. The one who spoke was a young man in his late 20s. He was tall and had a fair complexion, just like a woman. Even in such a late autumn weather, he was still waving a folding fan in his hand. He was waving it back and forth leisurely, which was a little out of place. However, no one said anything. It was obvious that this person had some background. Brother Cheng, the second master, is not giving any face to Jun Mo Xia. What Brother Cheng said is right. Jun Mo Xia is just a debauchee, a prodigal son of a wealthy family. As far as he's concerned, he doesn't have the slightest bit of value. However, he has a good family behind him, and a good elder. This second master is giving face to Jun Zhantian. An old man in his 50s or 60s sat upright on a chair as he spoke in a leisurely manner. Even if Jun Zhantian comes personally, what can he do? The young Brother Cheng chuckled and said disapprovingly, although Jun Zhantian has a high status and power, but when it comes to Xian Qi cultivation, he is at best only comparable to Tian Xian. If he really wants to kill him, I can ask my father to do it. It will be as easy as blowing off dust. As soon as these words came out, even the eyebrows of the second prince, who was sitting in the middle, unconsciously wrinkled slightly. Everyone frowned. Just Tian Xian, that's all. You make it sound so easy. How many Tian Xian experts are there in the entire Tian Xiang kingdom? Although your Qing family is a big family with many experts, it is still just a family of the pugilistic world. Compared to the Jun family's military strength, there is no comparison at all. Perhaps it should be said the other way around. If Jun Zhantian wanted to destroy the Qing family, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. I've realized that people really can't have a relaxed mentality. After the double monthly votes, my heart relaxed. This has directly led to my poor state of mind for the past few days. My writing speed has plummeted. I will sincerely reflect on myself. From now on, I will work hard to restore my fighting state. Charge! Fight! Fight! Therefore, I beg for monthly votes. Let me be excited again. I would rather be more tired. More tired. Chapter 130. As for your father, although no one has seen him, but according to the rumors, he is only at the level of Tian Xian. Even if he were to fight Grandpa Jun one-on-one, it would be hard to tell who would emerge victorious. In fact, the chances of your father being defeated and killed are much higher. To actually say that dealing with Jun Zhantian would be as easy as blowing off dust, what shameless boasting. This man surnamed Cheng is a descendant of the Qing family of Jiangdong. His father is the current head of the Qing family. For some unknown reason, he has recently joined the second prince's side. Seeing that his family's influence is indeed extraordinary, the second prince has been rather polite to him. But this man does not look like a man, and his character is a complete idiot. Moreover, he has a very high opinion of himself, as if to say, I am number one in the world. Usually, he does not put others in his eyes. Although his cultivation is only at the peak of Silver Xian, his character is insufferably arrogant. The second prince had asked him to come today because he knows that Jun Moxie is a downright debauchee. Here, he is of the same rotten taste, even to the point of fighting poison with poison, but now that he was acting like this, he was worried that he would mess things up here. Sitting next to him is a man with a dispirited expression, his legs spread wide, his posture is quite strange. This is Lord Lu from the other day. That day, he was chasing the mysterious man and fell into the water. His crotch was struck by a bamboo pole with the force of a thunderbolt, which directly led to the birth of an official member of the imperial palace. However, it was outside of the imperial palace. Lord Lu regarded that incident as the greatest humiliation of his life. These days, Lord Lu has been frantically treating his something, and then frantically searching for people. But he did not see the face of the mysterious man that day. At best, he only saw a big white buttocks. Therefore, every person that was caught these days would go through the same procedure, bring them to Lord Lu, turn them around, and take off their pants for verification. Therefore, during this period of time, there was a rumor in the second prince's residence. Ever since Lord Lu was injured, his sexual preferences had changed drastically. He was only interested in butts, and it had to be the butts of young men. It seemed that the whiter the butts, The more he liked them. As a result, every time his subordinates saw Lord Lu, the first thing they would do was to anxiously cover their anus. If by any chance Lord Lu took a fancy to her well-developed buttocks, how would she conduct herself in the future? Second Master, Jun Sunshao is here. As soon as the door to the hall opened, a beautiful woman with a graceful figure walked in with a gentle smile. She was tall, had a pair of phoenix eyes and peach cheeks. Her chest was perky, and her waist was slender. When she walked, she was like a lotus leaf swaying in the wind. However, she did not show the slightest bit of frivolity. What an outstanding beauty! You're becoming more and more beautiful. The second prince smiled and praised her. A trace of intoxication flashed in his eyes. He stood up and walked out of the hall. The spirit fog lake was vast and mighty, and the clear water was flowing leisurely. On one side of the lake, on the road, a small sedan chair swayed back and forth, neither too fast nor too slow. Lady Yu pointed to the people walking beside the palanquin. Second Master, please take a look. These people are the old men who used to follow Jun Zhantian. From this, it can be seen that the one sitting in the palanquin is Jun Moxie. It turned out to be an extremely vulgar red palanquin. The second prince almost could not restrain his laughter. This third young Master Jun's taste is truly unique and unique. He's just a typical debauchee. A cold light flashed in Lady Yu's eyes. She turned her head and smiled sweetly. Second Master, how about I personally receive this Jun Moxie today? You? The second prince's eyes were somewhat sullen. But when he saw the resolute look in Lady Yu's eyes, he helplessly sighed and said, "All right, but don't let him take advantage of you." Hee, Second Master, don't worry. Most people won't be able to take advantage of Lady Yu. The price to take advantage of Lady Yu is not cheap. Lady Yu smiled as she confidently watched the red palanquin come to a stop. You're right. Even I, ha ha. The second prince stopped talking with a faint smile on his face. Below, Jun Moxie had already drilled out of the palanquin. He landed unsteadily on the ground and staggered a little. He spat out a mouthful of saliva and sneezed. Then, he stretched his neck and massaged his waist. Shaking his arms, he tilted his head and walked up the stairs while trembling like a crab. He really has a personality. The second prince's eyes were profound as he observed Jun Moxie's every movement. I didn't think that the only descendant of the famous Jun family, Lord Zhantian, would be. Alas, I'm really disappointed. He sighed and turned around to enter the palanquin. As Jun Moxie stepped out of the palanquin, his mind was still thinking about the word that was written on his grandfather's desk, break. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile. The old man still doesn't trust me. He actually left a word like that to remind me. However, breaking isn't something that can be done so easily. It seems that the second prince is out of luck today. Jun Moxie stepped into the Nichang pavilion and took off his hat. He fanned himself twice and asked the attendant who came to greet him, "Where are the second prince and the others?" "The second prince and the others are waiting for you in the hall of Ue on the third floor." The attendant replied respectfully. "The hall of Ue? Is that where a few women strip naked?" Jun Xia chuckled and said, "The second prince really knows how to choose a good place. You've won my heart. No, you've dug your way into my heart." Then, he walked up the stairs with a lecherous look on his face. The attendants of the second prince all fainted at the same time. Does this guy really think that the second prince invited him to visit a prostitute? Why does he have such a pig's head? The one treating today is a real prince. How could he invite someone to visit a prostitute? Brother Xia, it's been a long time since we last met. You've become so refined and handsome. The second prince stood up in a friendly manner, and waved at Jun Xia in a reserved and noble manner. I've seen the second prince. Jun Moxie seemed to be flattered. Xia, don't dare to accept the second prince's courtesy. I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it. There's no need to be so polite. The second prince hurriedly stopped Jun Emosia from bowing. He couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment as he stretched out his hand. He suddenly felt a little unhappy in his heart. This guy didn't intend to bow at all. He was just making a gesture. But before he could even stretch out his hand, he had already straightened his body. Of course, Jun Moxie wouldn't bow to him. In Jun Moxie's heart, even the emperor was not worthy of his bow. If there was a god in this world, should he worship him? Then Jun Moxie would think, what does the god in this world have to do with me? What's more, he was just a prince. In the eyes of a great assassin like Jun Moxie, he was just a corpse that could change at any time. Apart from the relationship between the emperor and the minister, our two families are real friends. The second prince smiled warmly. I remember when we were young, we used to play together. But as we grew older, younger brother and I are now adults. Looking back on the past, I can't help but sigh. There was a hidden meaning in the second prince's words. He was reminding Jun Moxie, you and I still have a relationship between the emperor and the minister. Don't be too presumptuous. Others might care about the power of the Jun family, but do I care? I am the emperor and you are the minister. This prince is a notch higher than you. Yes. Jun Moxie immediately gave an evaluation in his heart, more than vicious, narrow-minded, not willing to suffer a loss for such a small matter. You have to fight back with words. You can't be a great person. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but become absent-minded. There were still 4 people staring at him covetously, especially that greasy-haired guy in his late 20s. The way he looked at him was full of contempt and disdain. The second prince invited me, why did he bring such a hateful guy? Who do you think you are? How dare you frown at me? Younger brother, let me introduce you to a few good friends. The moment the second prince said this, the other 4 people stood up. This is my teacher, Mr. Fong Bo Wen from the Hongwen School. The second prince's attitude was very respectful. Fong Bo Wen felt very proud as he stroked his beard and looked at Jun Moxie. He laughed and said, this old man is just an old man, how can I compare to you young talents? Greetings, Mr. Fong Bo Wen. Jun Moxie looked at this old man and was a little wary. This old man was old, but he didn't look bad at all. He was calm and full of energy, and his energy was restrained. Such a person was actually the second prince's teacher. Or someone from the Hongwen school. He must have some background. This is Lu Sibo, Lord Lu. Lord Lu is skilled in both the pen and the sword. He is a rare talent. The second prince smiled. Jun Emosia sized up this Lord Lu who had caused him to run around naked, and had nearly plucked out half of his bird feathers. Then, he asked with a playful expression, Lord Lu's posture is quite different from the others. TSK, look at how tall and straight you are. You're truly a bold and decisive man. Lu Sibo didn't expect that Jun Moxie's first words would expose his scars. Lu Sibo's face turned red as he stood in front of Jun Moxie with his legs wide apart, afraid that he would accidentally touch his scars. Of course, he was very different from the others. The Jun family's third young master is also very different. He is much more handsome than the others. Lu Sibo clenched his teeth and cupped his hands. You can see it too. I am also puzzled. Why is he so handsome? He is so handsome that there is no justice in this world. He is so handsome that it makes people jealous. He is a bosom friend and bosom friend. I'll treat you to a drink some other day. Jun Emosia coquettishly combed his hair, and shook his head in a very flashy manner. He had shamelessly taken Lu Sibo's sarcasm as a compliment, and even accepted it all. Everyone was speechless. I have never seen such a narcissist. Lord Lu was even more depressed. Who would want to be bosom friends with you? Jun Sunchao's reputation is well deserved. Meeting you in person is better than hearing about you. I admire you. Ha. I am Cheng De Chao. Young Master Cheng squeezed out an arrogant smile when he saw that Jun Moxie was looking at him. He cupped his hands in a perfunctory manner, and didn't forget to stab June Dashao with a few words. Ching Da Chao. I have never heard of him. June Moxie turned his head, and showed him the back of his head. This guy is very arrogant. Motherfucker. He has been giving me face since the beginning. And he even dared to stab me. Do you think I can't tell? Who do you think you are, you bastard?